That is basically what Satoshi found when he discovered Bitcoin. You can view it as an element without protons or neutrons. So this is an element without mass. The information about the element is the element, since it's a purely informational element. Amidst the fiat decadence, Satoshi introduced a system, simple and elegant, designed to destroy seigniorage from ever becoming again prevalent. This allows the individual to shield his efforts from the state's malevolence. We're able to build on the baseline of humanity's latest element, Bitcoin. Amidst the fiat decadence, Satoshi introduced a system, simple and elegant, designed to destroy seigniorage from ever becoming again prevalent. This allows the individual to shield his efforts from the state's malevolence. We're able to build on the baseline of humanity's latest element, Bitcoin. What are you trying to tell me? I can sell my Bitcoin for millions one day? No, Neo. I'm trying to tell you that when you're ready, you won't have to. Central bankers are tripping over themselves to devalue their currency. Bitcoin with the world of fiat currency. You gotta stack the motherfuckers. You're against Bitcoin, you're against freedom. What's going on, Puncher? Cosmo?
What's up, buddy? Good morning. How are you?
Wonderful. That was Real Richard, everybody. He gave us access to his full library, so we've been just playing random things from him. We have somebody actually making us a theme song dedicated just for us, so that's kind of cool.
You are all over this, my man. Really working
Well,
behind
it's
the scenes.
honestly a lot of people have been just like coming to us, the thing that just started out organically, like just, the fraternal brotherhood and sisters in the mix to just stand together and cool things happen. So I think when we're all in the same headspace, amazing things happen. So it's a collective will of the people that decides things like what holds value and what money is. So it's cool stuff, man. Looks like we lost Cosmo. We got to throw him back up here. Good morning, Robert.
This is crazy, guys. Crazy.
Hey, Lauren. Since this is technically my day, and you're hosting because my Wi-Fi sucks,
Yes.
and I do appreciate that. I was wondering if Robert could give us an overview. I heard him earlier on Danish's Space and some others, and I just think a lot's going on, and it might be pertinent to some of the things we're talking about today. Blood in the streets type
Hey,
stuff.
Puncher.
Yeah.
Should we just go say hi to the other two people up here for now, and then shoot over there? Because we just had Cosmo had some issues too. We'll go to Cosmo, Trey, and then start there. How's that sound?
Yeah, bud. Sure thing.
Morning, Cosmo.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's better. I know you were having some technical issues.
Yeah, I have a time limit set on my phone because I spent way too much time on this app and it went off, so I had to suspend that and jump back on. So
Good job. Okay, Trey. Good morning.
Yo, what's up? Good morning. Triffin Dilemma in full force these days. It's been fun to watch.
Crazy. Yeah, it is. It's fun to watch. I agree. Sorry. Go ahead, Puncher. I didn't mean to bullguard your show here.
No, not at all, Robert. If you could give us 5 to 10 minutes on what you're seeing and what you think's happening, I think that'd be really helpful.
Yeah.
So let's see. Okay, let's start with like the way things worked. The way things worked before, in uncertain times, in recession, slow growth sort of times, people flock to buy U.S. Treasuries. That means rates, which are opposite to the value of the bond, rates go down. So rates go. We're entering a recession. People buy bonds. Rates go down. People buy the dollar. In times of global uncertainty, the dollar goes up. The dollar has acted as like the safe haven. So that's historically how it goes. CPI and PPI both come in way lower than expected. People buy bonds because the very simply the yield on a bond is supposed to approximate nominal growth. Nominal growth means counting inflation. So, if you're entering recession or growth scare, clearly, growth is not as high, rates should be lower, and so people buy bonds. Okay, so what are we seeing now? We're seeing rates up, meaning bonds down. We are headed into the largest negative growth shock since COVID, since a novel virus was gripping the world and bringing the global economy to a standstill. We're facing the largest negative growth concern since COVID, and rates are skyrocketing. We are seeing the most heightened global uncertainty and global trade conflict in, I don't know, decades, if not 100 years. And the dollar is dumping. It's not going up. So I say all this to try to paint the picture that what we're seeing is the exact opposite of what we should be seeing. And how do we know that yields are not rising due to inflation? Well, there are instruments that I watch, that anyone can watch if you have TradingView, that indicate these metrics, right? So inflation is a big component. So let's pull that up. There's something called an inflation break even. It's a swap, it's a derivative, but it's traded and it tells you what the market thinks inflation is. Well, since Liberation Day, it's down by 10 basis points. I'm looking at the 10-year break even swap right now. It's down 10 basis points. And what has the 10-year yield done since Liberation Day? It's up 50. Well, since Liberation Day, the 10-year is up now, about 50 basis points. So what that means is that if the yield is up 50 basis points, but we know that the market is expecting 10 basis points less of inflation, that means that this rate, this move is 60 basis points in the wrong direction. Real quick, a basis point is just, 0.07% is 7 basis points. So it's just a measure of that number. And so it might sound small, right? Like, oh, well, that's just half of 1%. That's nothing, right? Bitcoin moves 5% every day. That's no big deal. Sure. But for bonds, remember, these are the global collateral for the entire global financial system. And part of what's happening is the basis trade unwind. Well, what is that? What these hedge funds were doing was they were going into repo markets, getting funding, buying treasuries, buying, the real treasury, taking that treasury that they have now and pledging it as collateral for some other trade. Right. So they pledge that as collateral. They get money for that collateral, just like a Bitcoin backed loan. No different at all, really. They get money for that. They take that money and they go use it to do something else. For the basis trade, what they were doing was shorting treasury futures, but that part doesn't matter so much. Just imagine it like a Bitcoin backed loan. Now imagine Bitcoin falls 70% in a week. Well, you took your Bitcoin you pledged it as collateral, and the value of your collateral just plummeted in a week, in a very short time frame. Well, you get margin called, and whatever. Hopefully, the money you got for that loan, hopefully you invested it well, and hopefully that investment is working out very quickly in your favor. Because otherwise you can hopefully see how this can become a huge margin call event, a huge deleveraging, a huge VAR shock, which is value at risk. This is what happens in kind of big broad-based deleveraging, where the pretty much everything just gets sold. So that's certainly part of it. The other part of it, like we kind of mentioned in the very beginning, is so basis trade unwind, kind of deleveraging. That's certainly part of it. If that was the only part of it, the dollar would be ripping higher. And I just actually kind of had a little back and forth with Luke Groman about this. Someone was trying to paint it as, oh, it's just, don't worry, nothing really crazy is going on. It's just a basis trade unwind. It's just deleveraging. And he commented something, and I asked him. I said, well, Luke, am I crazy? Or if it was really just this garden variety vanilla sort of deleveraging, wouldn't the dollar be ripping higher and not lower, not dumping, not falling off a cliff? And he said, yes, exactly. If this was purely domestic hedge funds that were deleveraging, the dollar would be ripping higher, not dumping, not falling off a cliff, not plummeting and through any and all support that it might have had.
So what does that tell you, Robert?
So what that indicates is imagine you're a Chinese bank. You bought U.S. Treasuries. You hold those U.S. Treasuries. They're basically dollars. In a lot of ways, they're basically dollars. They're denominated in dollars. So they're kind of effectively dollars. Well, if you want to sell that Treasury, you sell the Treasury. Say you get $1 million for that Treasury, $10,000 for that Treasury. Now you have $10,000. Okay, well, say you don't want to hold dollars anymore. Say you want to hold, I don't know, gold. Well, you would buy gold, or you would sell the dollars for another currency. If you wanted to hold, say you want to hold half of that value, the Treasury that you had before, say you want to split it and you want to have half in kind of a currency that's a little bit more liquid, a little bit more transportable, fungible. You might say, okay, out of that 10,000, half of it, I'll find a good currency to put it into. Half of it, I'll just put in gold. It's kind of long-term savings, no big deal. Gold is ripping higher. So in that event, you would be for the currency portion, right? Say you look at the Swiss franc and you're like, whoa, Swiss franc is way stronger versus the dollar. This thing is strengthening mightily versus the dollar. That'll hold my purchasing power way better than the dollar. You would sell your dollars and buy the Swiss franc. So in a currency transaction, you're selling one currency and buying another. So then what you would see is the dollar dumping. If that was what was going on, is foreigners are selling treasuries, getting dollars, but they go, I don't want to hold these dollars anymore. I want the yen or the franc, the Swiss franc. They would sell those dollars, putting downward pressure on the DXY. And I would point out in the past week, we're down, I think, 3%. Let me see. Yeah, like almost 3. At one point, it was like 3.5%. As of right now, it's 2.8% on the dollar, which again, just for perspective, that kind of move in a currency is pretty large. Like we saw
Robert,
another really big move in early March when we first started talking about it.
Okay, so to summarize, traditionally when things go a little bit haywire, the flight to safety has been the dollar, which strengthens the dollar in the form of treasuries. But what's happening now is the dollar isn't being seen as that traditional flight to currency. So in effect, sovereigns around the world, on top of the basis unwind,
Yep.
are going to other currencies as that flight to safety, other than the dollar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. So and the other thing to remember, like say you're a Chinese person and you want to hold U.S. Treasuries. Well, the reason that the dollar appreciates in that flight to safety is because if you're a Chinese person or a European or something like that, you want to buy treasuries. Well, first you have euros, you have yuan, right? First, you have to convert, like the U.S. Treasury, when you go to buy a Treasury bond, they don't accept yuan, they don't accept euros, they don't accept yen. So first, you have to convert your local currency, right, the yen or the euro. You have to sell the euro, sell the yuan to buy dollars. So now you have
And
dollars.
that's because
Now
the
you can
dollar
go.
is accepted worldwide as part of the euro dollar system, as part of the world reserve currency, correct?
Well, it's just it's just kind of procedurally what you need. It's the only unit. It's the only medium of exchange that the Treasury Department accepts, right? So it's kind of more of just like a mechanical thing. You have to sell your native currency to buy dollars, and then you have dollars. Now you can go to the Treasury Department and buy some bonds. That's why the dollar strengthens as yields go down. Usually, generally speaking, that's what you see. You see the dollar index going up, the dollar is strengthening. And because people, think of it very, very brief, like very simply, there's kind of like the system, the dollar system, and then there's the euro system or the Chinese system. As power and wealth and capital and money flows from, say, the euro system and the Asian system into the dollar system, that includes the dollar and treasury bonds. It's kind of all one thing, generally speaking. But what we are seeing now is the opposite, where all that foreign capital that had been pumped into our markets via the trade deficit, via the financial surplus, financial account surplus, all that money is going, I don't want to be in this dollar system anymore. I want to be in some other system. So they're selling their treasuries, getting dollars, selling those dollars, and buying yen or the Swiss franc or even the euro.
Something else,
Yeah.
something other than dollars. Okay. Now, I want to try to weave this together, and I'm not trying to win an argument. I'm just trying to get to the truth. And I want to be sensitive to Tomer too, because a lot of people are like, well, what does this have to do with Bitcoin? And in my opinion, all of these things are part of a transition period into a neutral reserve currency, whether that's going to be gold or Bitcoin in the future. But these are the things that kind of have to happen. So the other day, Dark had mentioned that he thought that the Fed might act because of the rise in the 10-year yields. And Trey, I see your hand, but I just want to get through this because we do have a guest as well. The rise in the 10-year yields, which we're seeing again today above, I don't even know where they're at, but I think they're above 4.5.
Yep.
Why do you say, Robert, that is painting everybody, quote unquote, in a box? That the Fed might not be able to move, everybody's kind of in a box at this point. Can you articulate that?
Yeah, of course. And just first, I would say this is all Bitcoin. This is all super pertinent to Bitcoin. Like if there's ever been a macro story going on that is relevant to Bitcoin, it is this. So hopefully I'm saying things clearly.
I agree. Totally, I agree. But go ahead,
But
please.
yeah. The reason that everyone is in a box, this is a balance of payments crisis, which I believe the U.S. is currently experiencing. These normally happen to emerging markets, and what you see is the similar moves in their long bonds, their long bond yields, where people start dumping bonds when they are going into a recession or there are issues. They actually sell the bonds and then they sell the currency, right? They don't want to be part of that crisis. They know the money. They know the central bank of Argentina or Venezuela. They know what they're going to do, right? They're going to cut rates to zero. They're going to fire up the money printer, and they are just going to go nuclear, right? And no one wants to be in a currency or in a 4% bond of that country, right? So they flee all of that. So it's normally something you see during in emerging markets that are going through fiscal crises and balance of payments crises. So for us, why we're in the box here in the U.S., if they cut, we are effectively, U.S. people need to start to shift their mindset. I've studied emerging markets, quite extensively because I kind of saw this developing, this situation developing, this parallel. And I would recommend that, it's going to take some time for people to reorient their whole framework of how things work, because in an emerging market, when the Fed cuts rates, the long end of the yield curve goes up. The interest rates, the yields on the treasuries go up.
And that's called a bear steepener on the yield curve, correct?
Yeah, so a bear steepener is when the curve is steepening, meaning say the 30-year yield, the 30-year yield versus the 2-year yield. the 30-year yield starts going way higher than the 2-year yield. That's a steepening of the yield curve. And what that indicates is that the market is
Robert, sorry, the converse would be at the short end of the duration curve, yields go down and it steepens, but on the opposite end.
Yeah,
Correct.
so there is a bull steepener. I don't want to confuse people too much. There is a bull steepener, but that's not what we're seeing. But yeah, a steepening of the yield curve, what that indicates, what that is telling you, the information that's giving you is that the market is starting to get increasingly worried about inflation, that the market is starting to get increasingly worried. Oh God, I locked myself into 30 years holding this bond that's only giving me, 2.2%. And oh my God, it looks like they're kind of about to fire up the money printer and inflation might be 8, 9, 10, 11%, right? So that's why the curve steepens. The longer the bond that you hold, the longer the duration of that bond, the more worried you are, right? Because you locked yourself into a 10-year commitment or a 30-year commitment. So it matters more. The longer the bond is, the more inflation worries you, right? Because you've locked yourself into more time. And so we're seeing that steepening of the yield curve, which indicates the market is clearly worried about fiscal issues, about inflation, about debt, right? And financial repression and all these things. They're demanding higher interest rates to hold those longer term bonds. That's basically what a steepening is telling you.
What does this have
And
to
so
do
so the
with
box, so the
Bitcoin?
box is
What does this have
so
to
the
do with
box is
Bitcoin?
big. Okay, two things. One, Bitcoin we know as the scarcity element of it. In a world where the only way out of this box, say for the Fed, they really kind of have two options. One, lower rates. But if they do that, I think they're smart enough to realize long end rates will just run away from them. So I don't think they're going to cut rates. But we know cutting rates would be inflationary. We know Bitcoin does well in inflationary environments. So option two is they take their balance sheet higher, right? They print money and buy stuff, buy long-term bonds, QE. And we know that Bitcoin's properties, we know that is also good for Bitcoin. That's kind of, the one side of it, right? Both of those boxes, both of those options for the Fed are both very positive for Bitcoin. Okay, now let's go to what I would argue is more important, which is the end of the dollar reserve system. The start, I'm not saying it's all, crash and burn totally, but the start of an unwinding of this dollar reserve system. And basically, what the world needs is they need currencies to be fundamentally fairly valued. We need a measuring stick. We need a neutral measuring stick. If a country has a trade surplus with another, they're going to have a bunch of wealth of capital, right? And they're going to need that they're going to need to put that into something. And for the longest time, that's been dollars. Well, what happens when the dollar system, call it, starts to kind of fail, right? Or starts to fade away? Well, they need to find something to put all those trade surpluses into, something neutral, right? Something another country cannot control, something where you can rely, what it is, right? You can rely their stability, gold, what you're getting. Bitcoin, the monetary policy of Bitcoin, right? You know what you're getting. It's
Hey, Robert.
unconfiscated, all the properties we know. And that's so if the dollar system is fading and the world is transitioning clearly to gold, the next logical conclusion is that some of those flows will start to go into Bitcoin, and it'll be immense. Like the US
Yeah,
dollar price of Bitcoin will be immense.
Hey,
I love that.
Lawrence,
Yeah,
hang on one second, Robert.
sure. Yeah.
So I appreciate that. And Tomer, I know from our back channel, and for those who don't know, a lot of us back channel all day on different threads, and we talk about a bunch of different stuff. And I really appreciate all that. Tomer's concerns, and Tomer, I don't want to speak for you, is that a lot of the new kind of orange-pilled folks are purely about number go up, and that's all they care about. They don't understand the bigger picture of what Bitcoin is and what Bitcoin is all about. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Tomer.
I
I
mean,
don't want to speak for you.
I wouldn't even say that I think that they're all about number go up. I think that all they hear about is investment theses linked to current macroeconomic factors, indicators, or geopolitical factors and indicators, which weren't an issue. Like every week we hear about something that wasn't an issue a week before, and then we forget what we were hearing the week before. And so like today it's the Dixie is down. A week ago it was the tariffs are coming. A week before that was something else. And so there's these moving targets, all and they all of these get positioned as, oh, and there's massive inflows coming into Bitcoin. Michael Saylor's going to do this, corporations are going to do that, ETFs are going to do this and that. And the part that actually concerns me about all this is some of these hypotheses may turn out to be correct entirely or partially, or incorrect more than they are correct. But at the base of understanding Bitcoin and why you might want to hold it is understanding how Bitcoin works. And Bitcoin isn't connected to the Dixie, and it's not connected to macroeconomics, and it's not connected into these things. Like it gets priced in terms of US dollars against these things, and so it's important to know. And if someone's here just because they want to be rich, that's fine too. But I think if you don't understand how Bitcoin works and where it comes from and how it's built, then you end up listening, and this is no knock against what Robert's saying. You end up trying to make sense of a very complicated and somewhat nonsensical world, and you have no anchor with which to make sense of it. And I think what I find so valuable about Bitcoin is I can understand it. It is a system that it is straightforward to explain. You have to learn some new terms and how they work, but once you understand it, you understand it. And there aren't changes being made. Donald Trump doesn't wake up on the wrong side of the bed and then the whole world is turned upside down for Bitcoin. It just continues to work the way it works. And you don't have to keep adding new realms of, oh, well, here's how the derivatives markets work, and here's how the foreign exchange works, and here's how foreign currencies work with current currency. Like, you just don't need to understand that. You have a system of money that you can understand, that is being understood by more and more people. And the service that I feel we ought to be providing here is explanations of why Bitcoin works, how it's built, so that people can hold on to that firm ground, that pillar that isn't moving all around all over the place all the time, and that they don't have to believe in one person's hypothesis versus another person's hypothesis. What they have is something that is verifiable to them and immalleable, so they can verify it once, and once they understand it, they can know that it's not changing. I'm getting a bunch of DMs, but
I,
like that's yeah.
oh yeah, Tomer, you and I, and many on this thread have already crossed that bridge, and I am very sensitive to what you just said, and I agree wholeheartedly. But a lot of people are going to come to Bitcoin, good, bad, or indifferent, because they're going to be forced into Bitcoin as a safe haven. And so when Robert is explaining why the current system is unwinding and the mechanics of it, while we don't need to understand it to understand Bitcoin, I think it's beneficial to understand what's happening.
Yeah, but
And I
Robert
think
may
it's,
be like Robert may be wrong about whether it's happening or not, and he may be wrong about the speed
sure,
at which it's happening. And so what I don't want people to think is I have to buy this particular thesis to believe in Bitcoin. That's the main point I'm
absolutely.
trying to get at,
Bitcoin doesn't
right?
care.
Like,
I,
and
I
I think
agree.
all these theories are really interesting, and I don't know exactly at what rate some of them are going to happen and some aren't. And we've had people calling for collapses of things and for $10,000 candle days, and and $600 or $10,000 MicroStrategy shares. And that's the part that has me concerned over what's been dominant in the narrative over the last couple of years. Right? It's all been about you're going to get rich because of all these things that aren't a part of Bitcoin. And I'm telling you,
Completely.
like, they may be right, they may be wrong. Some of them may happen faster, slower, whatever. If you understand Bitcoin, you'll be able to sleep at night owning Bitcoin, and you'll want to take it into self custody, and you might want to mine some or contribute to the hash rate. Like, there are things that you'll want to do when you understand it, that that are not based in you being afraid of the rest of that the world is going to fall apart imminently, or you not knowing what's going to happen in the rest of the world imminently. That you've actually got a way to look into the future with something with perfect reliability and certainty. And I think that's where I'd like to spend more of my time, at least. Like, you guys do what you want, right? But I'd like
Totally,
to spend more of my time talking about those
totally.
things.
But Tomer, some of my friends are traditional finance guys and very steeped into it, and they don't even recognize that there's a problem. So for them, guys like Robert can define the problem for them. If you don't think there's a problem, your need and desire for Bitcoin is
Yeah.
non-existent,
Well, listen,
and that's
for
where I
some
think,
people
yeah,
there isn't a problem. Because they are the problem for the rest of us, right? Like, if you're extracting value from the system through unfair means, you don't you tend not to see it as a problem. You tend to see it like, this is a good world. I chose a good career. I chose a good profession. And it's going to be very hard to explain to them that it's a problem because they're extracting value from hardworking people who are actually creating value in the economy. And I don't know if those are the people who you're referring to, but I think,
well, I mean, they're friends. I mean, like, I don't even think that they understand that they're extracting value
yeah,
through other. I don't even think they think about it that deeply. They just have done what they were told to do. They went to school, they did well, they got a good job, they're providing for
right.
their family. Their thoughts about these things are not untoward or
They're sending
devious.
their kids
It's
to
just,
private school and taking private plane
that's right.
vacations and all this stuff. And
They're
they
playing
are,
by the
like,
rules
they are ins- desensitized to the struggles that other people are having. Look, I live in Canada. We have
completely.
a guy who's been installed as prime minister, and people are asking, reporters are asking him the question, what do you think about the price of groceries? And we've got this trade problem with the United States. What are you going to buy cheaper strawberries that are from the United States, or more expensive strawberries that aren't from there? And he's like, oh, I don't buy my own groceries. I have servants do that. Like, that's the kind of people who, and he's a former central banker of both the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England. So, like, I'm not saying he knows.
I mean, to be
Yeah,
fair,
yeah.
I'm poor as fuck, right? To be fair, like, y'all in here have hundreds of times more wealth in Bitcoin than me. Like, I'm just a nerd, guys. Like,
Why are we
I'm
listening
not.
to this poor guy? I'm just
Oh,
kidding.
you're poor. We shouldn't
Well,
listen to
Very
you
well,
at all.
guys, I appreciate. Listen, I appreciate. I did invite a guest today because we had nothing to talk about, and now
We
we
always
have
have something to
There's a
talk
lot of
about,
hands
tons.
up.
Puncher.
So
Come on.
I,
So let me get through this. Tomer, you are going to hate this. So earmuffs, whatever you got to do, but we will get to Bitcoin, and I am very sensitive to where you're headed. But I did invite Kevin Brent Cook on, and Kevin, I appreciate you coming here because it shows me you have guts, and a lot of people just kind of run and hide. And this is not a setup. This is a game of addition. Kevin, do you want to give your background a little bit, and if you're a Bitcoiner or
Puncher, I'm
not? I don't
assuming
even
we're
know.
just gonna shit can the last part and then just leave all these hands hanging. Is that correct?
Well, for the moment, I got to be
Okay.
respectful of Kevin because I did
Yeah.
invite him
Fine.
to. Kev, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Puncher, thanks for having me. Yeah, as you mentioned, Darkside made a post on Tuesday that the Fed was going to crack within 72 hours, and I said that's ridiculous. They need to see the data destruction first. They're not going to bail out, whatever crisis we're in just because of some White House policy. So then you and I went back and forth a little bit, and I heard I was accused of having TDS or something. So,
Yeah,
but
Dark said the TDS is strong in this one or something. And look, again, Tomer's going to hate this, and most people are going to hate this, but this is what I came up with 3 days ago, and now it's kind of the ship has sailed in a different direction. But Kev, would you say that there's a problem that needs to be dealt with, as Roberts articulated it, and the twin deficits and Triffin's dilemma and all of that?
absolutely. And you asked for my background just quickly. I was on an institutional FX desk. I did spot futures arb, traded about 100 million a night. It was the introduction to the euro, and that's all we did. We were a unit at the CME. We just priced the futures to reflect spot in a constant two-sided market. That means I did tons of volume, was getting picked off by Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs, and had to deal with banks around the world. We took a futures position and then immediately had to hedge it in spot if we could. Did some trading on the side, but that was you know, that's where I cut my teeth in markets and learned macro.
Yeah.
As
You
far as
understand
I,
macro, and
I
are
just
you a
got
Bitcoiner?
I just got to say, Tomer, um, fantastic sanity. I agreed with just about everything he said. That we've got everybody who either they just want number to go up, or they want to tear down the system, and it's all going to end tomorrow. And that's baloney. I mean, we've got so many people, and I want people to be Bitcoiners. I run an education group for families and friends, and I want people to understand this revolution and TradeFi people too. But a lot of what we see on X here is it's just internet education. People getting their minor and macro from YouTube videos, and I say if you're going to try it, at least be like Robert. Robert goes in deep and really studies the stuff to understand it. So you can't. So there's a lot of hype out there that, oh my gosh, the system's falling apart. Now's our time, and $10,000 God candles and all that stuff. That's not
Yeah,
the reason to be in Bitcoin.
right. I don't think any serious Bitcoiner pays any attention to that. That is just nonsense. And anybody who says they know is lying to you by definition. So, but I guess you know Darkside's background. He was a Wall Street guy, ran ARB desks. I mean, he's not just he didn't get his education from Twitter or
No,
YouTube.
yeah, I know. He is definitely was an institutional guy, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
very successful.
Hey,
Yes.
you asked about the problem. Do I understand the problem?
Yeah.
Definitely. I made a video that's got like 3,000 views. So thank you to everybody who watched it, of a thesis that I was building. And listen, I was late. It was only a year ago in March of 24 that I listened to Saylor and I got the message because he spoke my language. He talked about derivatives and how markets work. And so I was like, oh my God, this guy knows stuff. And so I really started listening. And then I put in my 100 hours probably. It doesn't always take 100 hours, but you could do it in 25 if you're fast. But I did the work, and then I published this video finally based on a presentation. It's called Bitcoin for Family Offices, and in there I'm like, yeah, the problem is that our money is broken. And I hadn't read Lynn Alden or any of these people yet, but I got it finally when I saw that when you're in the dollar system, you are subject to the persistent deficit-driven inflation. Congress is never going to reform. Congress will always run budget deficits. There was a brief flash of surplus under Clinton for whatever reason. Congress doesn't operate that way. Look at just yesterday. They're working on the budget now, and even the GOP is unwilling to make any cuts in spending. But we're gonna get tax cuts, and we're gonna raise the debt ceiling. So this is never going away. And that's when, it hit me. Yeah. Like I always told people for 20 years, the way you beat inflation is with equities and with real estate. Boom, boom, boom. I always pounded the table on that. I made my people money in NVIDIA and tons of other things like that. Lost money too, but and then real estate. But then I was like, oh man, if you don't get out of the dollar, if you don't take some of those profits and get out of the dollar system, your money is just melting, evaporating. So then this British guy came out with his video, The Problem, and it's like 40 minutes long. And yeah, it's a good story, and I think people should watch that. Show it to your family, friends, your financial advisor. I tried to do my goal in my video, Bitcoin for Family Offices, was could I do it in 500 seconds, which is the amount of time it takes light to get from the sun to Earth. Yeah, I went a little over. It's like 585 seconds, but I did it. I'll post it in the chat under Lauren here, and yeah, so I get the problem.
Okay, great. And that's why I wanted to have you on, because so many times on Twitter, people are anonymous, not you. The only reason I'm anonymous is because I got kicked off of Twitter permanently 4 times. So I'm under a pseudonym. But my name's Kevin as well. Um, and people start like just screaming and yelling and saying all kinds of bad stuff. And I didn't want it to go that way. And I wanted to invite you up here because I love Abraham Lincoln's quote. I do not like that man. I must get to know him better. Every time you can sit down and talk with somebody about something as opposed to just lob grenades over the fence, I'm all for that. And as I've gotten older, I've found that that's the way to go. So it sounds like we don't disagree that there's a problem, and that potentially we disagree that Trump is dealing with the problem, what his motivations are, and the way he's trying to deal with it. And that is a rabbit hole that, A, is unknowable, and B, will play itself out successfully or fail or as a failure soon enough. And that's really where I prefer respectful truth over artificial harmony, because in my line of work for many, many years, artificial harmony can get you killed. So that's why I prefer respectful truth over artificial harmony. And that's why I wanted to invite you up here. Now, we could go and destroy Tomer's day by arguing about Trump and his techniques and whether there's a plan or whether he's just shooting from the hip. All of that, none of that matters. But what I wanted to really get clear is that, and you understand that there's a problem that must be dealt with. And now it's just a matter of technique. And a lot of times on traditional finance, like the ones Robert's on, guys complain and bitch and moan, and my stocks are down. But when you ask, well, how do you deal with this problem via traditional finance outside of Bitcoin and the neutral reserve currency? The answer is, I don't know, but I just hate Donald Trump, or I don't know, but he's an idiot and he doesn't know what he's doing. So I don't know. At least we agree there's a problem. And the reason I'm so adamant about trying to figure out a way to articulate the problem is because most people don't know there's a problem. And I'll stop with this one thing.
Can I just jump in
When
for
I
a
was,
second? There's nothing
Tomer, go,
you can
please.
say that's going to ruin my day, for the very reason what I said is like there's nothing you can do to change Bitcoin. And I think if we want to maybe root in on the problem, I think Satoshi Nakamoto stated the problem when he first released Bitcoin, which is, he said, I can't remember the exact quote, but the central problem is that the central bank cannot be trusted to not debase the currency. Right? We have at the end of the
Yes.
day, we have something we're using as money.
The
Yeah.
big red button. We have
Yeah.
the big red
And whether
button
they
to what
print
Kevin was
fast or they print
alluding to.
slow or they incur debt or they do, all these sorts of, or now they're going to let stable coins be issued to circulate globally. Like they're all variations on the same theme, which is debasement or counterfeiting or inflation. All three words are basically three sides of the same coin. And that's what we get to prevent when we use Bitcoin. And that, I think, that's the profound world
Yes.
changing innovation here that doesn't need a new crisis every week to be a valid solution to that problem.
Well, let me wrap this up because I've talked way too much. Tomer, even understanding that there's a big red button that gets pushed, my friends are under the misapprehension that even knowing that the Fed and the system has our best interests in mind, and they're only going to do it to save the system and make things better, and that there really is not a problem. Even knowing that printing money out of thin air with no work behind it is not a big problem because the system is designed with your best interests in mind. And I'll stop with this. When I was selling things, there was a thing called the value triangle. And if you just think of a pyramid, on the top third of that pyramid, sliced off, somebody has a problem. They know how to fix it. They don't want to, so they pay you $1 to fix it. In the middle of that pyramid, they know they have a problem. They don't know how to fix it. They're willing to pay you double the amount for you to come in and fix the problem they don't know how to fix. But the real value is at the bottom, at the base of that triangle, where it's $3 down there. They don't even know they have a problem. And they sure as shit don't know how to fix it because they don't even know there's a problem. That's where most of my friends sit. And that's why I look to guys like Robert and Kevin and the what is the problem video and things like that, because I first have to convince them that there's a problem. And I know you and I, Tomer, are way past that point, but many, I would say the majority, are not. And if you can't convince them there's a problem, they're not interested in learning about Bitcoin. And that's just the way it is. And I'll stop talking. Lauren, your show.
Funny. No, I think I definitely agree with what Tomer is saying. I think, unfortunately, we have to play the delicate balancing game, even though it's a real fiat jacked up game of trying to draw crowds so that we can insert that message. For example, yesterday we did probably just over an hour segment on different layer twos and got pretty technical. And maybe that was a little much, but the sky was falling, in traditional markets. And Terrence and I were talking behind the scenes, saying like, okay, when we transition over, watch these numbers of live listeners go up, which indeed happened. So I think it's a delicate balance between trying to keep the space interesting with live current events and trying to bridge the gap between traditional finance and saying, hey, guess what, guys, there's hope. What I raised my hand for earlier was when Robert was talking, and I always hear this word sell. And that word really gets me because basically you're not really selling, you're just transferring your value from something to something else that you think is better for whatever reason. And
Converting.
yeah, exactly. Converting or opting or however you want to describe it. But I just hate the word sell because it kind of just leaves you hanging. Like, okay, what did you transfer or opt that value into or convert that value into? And I think the message for me in these spaces is, to get the word of Bitcoin out to as many people as possible. But in order to do that, we need to get as large an audience as possible. So that message is, hey, we're going to opt or convert that value into something that is stable and has hope and love and prosperity. And so the message to me is, hey, instead of promoting hatred and division, let's promote hope in a value keeping system that is sound, backed by mathematic and electricity. And to me, like, that's the main thrust of it all. And so however we can, navigate that, I think oftentimes some of these things become echo chambers and then you alienate other folks. And so it's, to me, it's a delicate balancing act, but I definitely agree with what Tomer's saying.
Yeah, my only point, and I hate to reiterate, if people don't know there's a problem, they're not looking for the solution. So I can talk all day about how fabulous Bitcoin is. They're looking at me like I'm a crazy person and I'm in a cult. And I remind them I'm in a cult where I trust nobody and I'm told to think for myself. But all that being said, you must define the problem first. And I think that's lost on a lot of Bitcoiners. And my only desire is to get people that I love and care about over the bridge to the other side
Hey,
safely.
Puncher,
That's it.
I don't have a solution if you don't have a problem. And you think of that concept when you're selling. The pyramid resonated to me because we use it a lot in the business world. But uh, I don't have a solution if you don't have a problem. The lack of a recognition of a problem prevents people from adopting a new paradigm about what might be in the future.
Better said than me, Thomas. I don't know the hands, Lauren. Why don't you want to go to hands or what do you want to do?
Oh, sorry, I wasn't even paying attention to the hands. We just got, Trey, did you want to weigh in? I know it would probably be backtracking. I think Simon had something, but I think we lost him. And then we just got Rusty up here. Trey.
Hey, yeah, I'm just listening and thinking through all this. Like, Bitcoin is money, and we think of it as money and use it as money and want it to be global money to replace the dollar system at some point in the future. And so you do need to understand how the current system that we're competing with operates in order to be more effective at driving that global adoption, right? Like, you got to understand your enemy, Sun Tzu and all that type of jazz, right? When it comes to like sorry, Robert, his description of what's going on and all that, like, it's really interesting. There's all these moving pieces. People have a lot of questions about it. My opinion is, like, this is like the definition of rock and hard place, right? Like, that is what this dilemma or this paradox is that Triffin uh, put out there, which is that Trump could be successful in eliminating the trade deficit, and it will lead to complete economic destruction because it will crash global liquidity in the dollar, and that will crash markets and cause liquidations of untold proportions. And that will lead to money printing, as we all know. Like, there is no way to actually directly fix these issues. There are ways to kind of stem the tide or maybe move things on the margin, but that is the definition of this paradox, is that if the dollar is to remain the global reserve currency and treasuries as the global reserve asset, then these trade deficits must persist. If they don't, they must be replaced by money printing of some other kind, either fiscal deficits or, direct money printing and, kind of like stimulus the way that we saw in the COVID years, directly injecting liquidity into people's bank accounts. And, people get really heated about Trump's doing this, he's protecting the middle class, this and that. It's all great. Like the goal is admirable, but the problem is that there is no actual solution except for a transfer from the current system and the way that it works to something that is neutral. The friction there, though, is that the dollar system is actually very anti-fragile. Like, these dynamics that are at play here, they reinforce the system when things get dicey. Because just as, the US has things that they are, experiencing volatility and people are losing money, and, the US hegemony is being challenged, it also is very painful for the rest of the world, which pushes them back into a level of comfort, which is back into the dollar system. So we're seeing these tensions play out, but there is no easy fix. And anything that the Trump administration or the current administration with dissent and all of them are going to do to address either the fiscal deficit or the trade deficit is going to just push the system closer to fracturing, and thereby bring back more money printing. That's like the essence of what's going on here.
Trey, that's so well said. And I get a lot of my OG Bitcoin friends who are like, well, they've been extracting from the system and, it's their time to pay up or whatever. Like, to the extent we can, I'd like to try to make the transition, not that we have that much control over it, but we can talk about it. I'd like to make the transition as painless for as many people as possible. And the way to do that is to get them into Bitcoin. So that's why I'm so passionate about it. I get that we've unfairly benefited, particularly in the United States, for forever due to the way the system is currently constructed. But I care about and I love the people that I've been trying to orange peel since 2013 when I bought Bitcoin for next to nothing. And they looked at me for over a decade now like I'm crazy. Like I'm trying to get through to them, and I'm trying to explain to them the problem and the solution because I love them. That's it. I'm not trying to win an argument. So when we talk about these things, it's simply trying to figure out what the best means is to get from system A, which is hard broken and can't be fixed, to system B, which is much better and isn't broken and would be better for everybody.
Absolutely. And I've got to jump out of here in maybe 5 minutes or something for a meeting, but I'd love to hear from Kevin, the featured guest here, and maybe Robert, on just like, where am I wrong in that? Is there some way to mitigate this dilemma? If they were to succeed in, in closing the trade deficit or balancing trade in the U.S., is there something else other than direct money printing or fiscal deficits or whatever? Like, how do they land this plane?
Trey, I gotta say, I like your characterization that the dollar system actually has some anti-fragileness to it. There is a robustness. Like, yeah, we've got some dislocations. Oh my God, the dollar's down over 3%. bonds are collapsing, but it's not, the system is not, cracking and falling apart. This isn't 2008. These are some dislocations that got built in. And what I've got to remind people is the trade deficit, and I think you touched on this, isn't the big problem. The real elephant in the economy is the fiscal deficit, and the way that Congress is incentivized to tax and spend. Until we reform Congress, we are going to have those deficits growing, and the interest cost is going to continue to grow. A trade war isn't going to solve that. If you watch, I'm going to go back to my video here, not to promote it, but remember, I'm an NVIDIA analyst now. I'm not a currency trader anymore. I've been an NVIDIA analyst since 2017. And so if you follow my feed on a regular basis, you'll see all I talk about is NVIDIA and the AI revolution and massively parallel architectures and 2 nanometer transistors and Hopper and Blackwell and what those tools do. Jensen puts those tools in the hands of scientists and engineers who are creating the future. So we are in what I call the fifth industrial revolution. The internet, 1995 to 2020 was I call that the fourth industrial revolution. It's all about the cloud and stuff, and smartphones. Really, in 2020, we entered what I call the fifth industrial revolution. It's all about AI, and the rapid pace of development here in scientific knowledge, engineering capabilities is just it's unreal. The speed of this ramp is exponential, and that's what's really going on here. Technology, I think Bitcoin's great as a technology, as an exponential technology, and so for people who were into that in the early 2010s, and even the mid 2010s, I'm jealous. Like, I wish I had woken up and got it. I was too busy focused on AI. But they're related. And so that's why I opened my video with, hey, here's what I knew. I knew about AI and NVIDIA, and now I see how Bitcoin is a 21st century monetary technology, just like AI. Um, you know, and people in the trade war thing. It's like they want to have their cake and eat it too. And I call it the iPhone paradox. The iPhone paradox is you've got this device in your hand that's awesome, but you want to go back to how the economy worked 50 years ago, and you can't do that.
Yeah, Kevin, I
Kevin,
think
not
you're
to
like
pick a
hitting
bone.
on
We just might be semantics.
you're Kevin. Sorry, just real quick comment. I
Sorry, Kev.
think you're hitting on
Yeah, go ahead.
um, the one thing that I think might be able to save us from this paradox and all this, which is just growth that might come from AI, from productivity advancements, generally speaking. If that continues apace, accelerates a little bit from here. You kind of like don't want it to accelerate too quickly, because if it accelerates too quickly, then a bunch of people are put out of work too quickly and they can't adjust. And then there's other problems, right? So it's a tricky thing it's a tricky needle to thread. But that might be the one out that the system has to kind of maintain the U.S. at the center of it without continuing to fracture, and not be maybe subject to these fiscal deficits as much, or these trade deficits as much.
I'm sure Robert might have a quote of whether we can grow our way out of this. But Kev, this might be semantics, or this might be a real disagreement. I don't see Bitcoin as a technology. Technologies are winner take most, right? The iPhone beat the BlackBerry, and then something one day will replace the iPhone. Bitcoin is a protocol, and protocols are winner take all. Fire, electric, the wheel. So I don't know if we're just semantics here, or if we have a
No,
disagreement on what Bitcoin actually is.
I'm just talking off the top of my head here, but yeah, no, at the core, it is a protocol. That's why I call this the fifth industrial revolution. AI is also a protocol. Bitcoin is a protocol, just like
Yep.
the internet was. So yeah, we are, and that's Trey said, hey, this could contribute to growth, or should. I agree, and we don't want it to go too fast. Unfortunately, we don't have that choice. This is going very fast.
Very fast, and I appreciate you, Kev. Let's go to Robert, and then Pubby and Rusty, I think, is how it went.
Yeah, I think there is a way actually to do it much less pain. Number one, I want to make sure people understand everything I was saying before. I am not arguing for the cat food under the bridge, total Mad Max sort of collapse. That has never been my base case. So I just want to make sure everyone clear on that. First of all, second of all, I would say that there is a way to shift or reorient our economy towards one that is more fair, one that is more healthy. Like, I part of the reason that, or from all the time I've spent digging through kind of the tradfi side or the economic side, what I've noticed is some pretty glaring issues. Like, for example, GDP over M2, GDP over gross federal debt. We have been getting declining GDP for as a share of M2, as a share of gross federal debt, right? Like there are so many kind of, we know inflation is, the money supply is growing much faster than CPI indicates, right? All these things. It all gets back to like accuracy in my mind, accuracy and fairness. And so anyways, when it comes to a trade deficit, like the net worth of the top 1% as a share of GDP and the trade deficit are the same line. Um, Growth is great, but it becomes a question of who benefits from that growth, who is who is capturing the productivity gains. And again, this is something I talk about all the time. That we know we have these kind of historic wealth inequality and horrible societal KPIs like the suicide rate. It becomes a question of who is benefiting, who is capturing, right? If my average hourly wage is trailing GDP by 80% over the past 40 years, certainly not me, right? GDP is growing much, much faster than my average hourly wage. So like the trade deficit, I think the problem with the trade deficit and saying we don't need to balance a trade deficit is, at least from the data I've looked at and how the system's currently been structured, the trade deficit is wealth inequality. You look at that line and as the trade deficit gets worse, anyone who holds financial assets benefits, right? Because there is a structural bid that comes in, right, to balance a current account deficit, which is the balance of trade, the main balance of trade. In order to balance that deficit, which we run, we need a financial account surplus, meaning money gets recycled into our capital markets. So there is kind of a structural foundational element of the trade deficit that does, in my opinion, I would disagree with Kevin respectfully, that the trade deficit does need to start to be addressed, but ultimately it gets to the point of tariffs are not the way to do it. The problem is the overvaluation of the dollar. That is the real root of the problem. This overvaluation of the dollar. We turned the dollar into a funding currency, and this carry trade where trillions of dollars just gets recycled into our capital markets, making the wealthy asset holders very wealthy and everyone else not so much. This is hyper financialization as a concept that people have spoken about before. And we're seeing it. We know it's happening. So I would argue that point, and I would say there is a way to do this much less painless, or much kind of less chaos. But they're not going about it. They're kind of, it seems like the order of operations that they're choosing is kind of not how I would do it.
Awesome. Hey, Puncher, let me just do a little bit of housekeeping real quick before we go to the next set of hands. I know we're in about an hour now, and I think a lot of guests oftentimes only dedicate about an hour of their day. So Kevin, if you need a jet at any time, just let us know. We'll feel free to just make the Irishman getaway or whatever Puncher titled it as. On a side note, Kevin is
The Irish exit. I'm sure Kevin has heard the Irish exit.
yeah, Kevin is the guy. I don't know if a lot of you remember or not. Back in the Fred/Bitcoin first days, I had a contest to guess the closest to the Bitcoin price. I think it was at the end of the year. Anyway, Kevin was the winner. So everybody, so Kevin, our featured guest today, was the winner of that. I think I like a lot of what Robert says, and I like the way he articulates things because it's more dumbed down for folks like me. Um, he also argues that when we're talking about a breaking down, arguably it is happening with all the data that he's produced about the life expectancy in the United States, the suicide rates, the amount of drug use, the amount of homelessness. So in ways we're actually experiencing that degradation. Maybe it's not a financial collapse, but it's a societal collapse and whatnot. So I really appreciate you, Infra, aka Robert. I think your analysis is great. And like I said, I think it's important to stick to the message, and I think that's why it's great for guys like Tomer to keep bringing us back home when we freak out about all these different things and go like Trump's my man, and really like politicians aren't the answer. And I think that uh, I love Tomer coming back and just saying, hey guys, we're here for the reason of Bitcoin, not to argue about politics and not to argue about all these things because those things divide us. And my goal is to bring us together under love and hope. So with that, I think. Puncher, did you say we were at Pubby, correct? Oh, that's another thing, guys. There's been a long list of hands, and we're going to try our best to work everybody in and get everybody up on stage. But some people have left because we haven't been able to work them into the conversation. So apologize
I
for
think
that.
I think Puppy was next, right?
Okay, perfect. Okay, Pubs.
Probably
How
then,
many
brother.
beers, Pubs?
Oh, good. Hey, just two since I joined the show. That's how long it's been with a hand up.
Yeah.
No, okay, no, man. This is great conversation, and I think Puncher brought it up first about. I just want to say, just real quick to get it back, just to the orange pilling. And you don't realize this at the time when people don't realize there's a problem. Okay, they don't realize that there's a problem, so they don't understand Bitcoin as a solution. So your arm killing game sort of changes because you can't waste. And I think it was Kevin was talking about. I think he said like there's a, I just spent 100 hours. I heard Sailor spent 100 hours on this. No, man, you spent more than that because you had thousands of hours to prep you. You had thousands of hours. That last 100 just pushed you over the goal line. And this is what you'll find out. There's so many people you can't do it for them. They got to do some work. They got to do the research. But I will say this: the longer you go on here, I'm coming on the end of a second halving. Um, I can only speak from the heart. I can only speak of what has worked for me. I can only speak to what I have seen wrong in the system. Okay, I can only speak to what dollar cost averaging some Bitcoin has done for me and self custody has done for me, and you pass it on. Now it's up to you to take that advice and do some research into what it means to you and your family. But yeah, moving forward, I don't know what to tell you. As you guys were talking, I was reminded of that movie 127 Hours. The dude that's out, he's out in the canyons hiking, and falls out and gets his arm caught. Right, he's there, days, and he's got two choices. Well, I'm either going to dehydrate and starve to death, or I don't know, I can take this little rusty pocket knife and cut off my arm. Right over the. I can cut off my arm and get out of here. I don't have the answer to this. I don't, and I shared it up in a nest that as soon as everything about tariffs came out, everyone's a goddamn expert on what tariffs are. I don't know what tariffs are going to do. No one really knows, but it's the people that don't even think there's a problem that everyone seems to have a solution. All I know is we're almost $37 trillion in debt, and the status quo isn't fixing it. And we can sit around, we can argue over the most painless way to do it. Sometimes you got to just rip the band-aid off. So I'm just going to say that we'll see how it plays out. Um, and the assumption that putting all these tariffs on China automatically brings jobs back to the U.S. and we rebuild the middle class. I don't know if that's true either. Maybe those jobs just go to other countries first. That they're saying, man, look at the tariffs on China. We got zero now with the U.S. Maybe we can build some factories. I don't know how it's going to work. All I'm saying is just add some Bitcoin. And yeah, thanks for having me up, man. Good to see you guys on a Friday.
For sure. I think we're at Rusty,
Don't
correct?
cut your arm off just yet, Puppy.
Yeah, don't cut your arm off. Tomer.
No, I'm not yet.
Hey,
Yeah, I thought we were going to
It
who are
was
we going
Rusty, I
to?
believe.
Rusty.
Yeah.
Rusty.
hey
Yep.
guys. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of y'all have heard me talk, and Robert Infra, I'm a fan, and you know that I look at all your stuff, and a lot of y'all know I spend a lot of time in what y'all call tradfi spaces, and the reason being, well, first off, I still work in it in an odd way, but it's also I do try to orange pill people, and I think I love that Puncher you brought in Kevin because it's not to sit here and bore people with all TradFi and everything like that, but the amount of money that is still stuck in that old system is astronomical. And the biggest thing here is tonight, I'm not going to throw out stats and everything like that. You just got to think of it like this. These guys are, what I see the past week or two, they're saying it's not working. That's so from a Bitcoin perspective, they are getting curious. And the amount of people who have become converts of it, I mean, it's unbelievable. You've got highly successful people who did make their their way in the traditional finance world, but um, having them convert over is not going to be an overnight success. But you know, I love this conversation because I try to dive.
That was me, fat finger. Sorry, I'm an idiot.
Uh,
Rusty, yeah, there you go. You're back.
okay. So anyway, so I love this conversation because again, I learned so what I love about this space in particular is it's like this great high level, and then it brings it down into the nitty gritty, and then we'll bring it back out and bring it back down. As to some, you go in, it's all Bitcoin nuances, every little detail of it. You go to a TradFi space, that's all you're going to hear about. This one is tries to bring it all together, and there is a major problem. Things are not trading and working like they should, and eventually I think these guys are going to wake up and go, wow, yeah, this is not working. And they are. I'm hearing it time and again, like Kevin
Yeah.
said.
Be- Before I kick it over to Cosmo, I'll just interject a couple of things. I think oftentimes people shame one another on these spaces and say, "Oh, we're all experts," blah 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 blah. But don't be ashamed. You have a brain. Use it. Go do some research. Don't just blindly follow some self-proclaimed expert just because he has a silver tongue. Go do research. And that's one of the things I love about these spaces is I rarely agree 100% with any of the speakers in here, but I am able,
Except for me.
yeah, I'm able to glean just nuggets of truth out of some of them. And then I go double check just to make sure we are on the right path. So utilize these kinds of things and this kind of information to make your own choice. And yeah, nobody in here is a expert on tariffs, but if we keep having these talks, we'll hopefully get closer to the truth. Don't let anybody shame you. You have a brain and you know how to use it or you wouldn't be here. I also love all the TradFi guys like Bob down there who was up on the stage earlier. Hop up at any time. Uh, he really adds a lot of value to a space. I love these TradFi guys because especially the guys that have been in it a long time, like Pink Shirt Guy. Like they know the TradFi system inside and out. They know what's wrong with it, and that's why they are in Bitcoin. And so for me, bridging this gap is super important. So it's delicate, I know, because it's a hell of a distance, and especially some of this money that's been around forever, like these boomers in TradFi. Like I don't know if we'll ever get through to them, but hopefully we'll get through to their kids, and hopefully the world will be a better place on a solid money standard once again. So that's kind of my goal, and I think Cosmo is next, so I'll kick it over to him, and then you can pick your hand after that because it looks like there's a lot of hands up.
Yeah, to Puppy's point, I think the 127 hours analogy was actually more poignant than as someone who's actually a professional at canyoneering. I've actually guided film crews down the canyon. He got his arm stuck in a bunch of them down there, and I actually know the 127 hours guys personally, at risk of doxing myself. But the way that he approached that canyon, it was actually he was kind of destined to get himself in trouble. And I think that the way that this whole system was set up, you look at the institution of the Federal Reserve, the Bretton Woods Agreement in 48, going off the gold standard, like it was always bound to end up like this, right? And so you kind of end up pigeonholing yourself into a situation where, it was never going to work in the first place. And I think, unfortunately, the people who set us up for failure aren't really going to be the ones who are going to have to suffer through the cutting off of the arm. That's going to have to be, their children, so us. But yeah, I think that, like, in terms of helping people understand the situation that we're in, sometimes it seems pretty gloomy. I think that, like we were talking about yesterday, just the rate at which open source software in general, and especially Bitcoin, is kind of like infiltrating the entire financial system. I think that, there's a lot of reasons to be incredibly optimistic. And I'm super hopeful for what the future looks like once we get kind of past the cutting off of the arm, so to speak.
Cosmo, you want to pick a hand because I don't know who's
Yeah,
next.
let's go to I see Justin and Kevin. I don't see any other hands. So
Yeah,
I think
Justin was before me, so go ahead.
yeah, go ahead, Justin.
Well, Kevin, you're the guest, and if you need to go or anything, you're welcome to take my spot first.
No, not at all. I got time. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think kind of I find myself in the middle of Tomer, and Tomer is one of those guys that brings so much positivity and even maybe philosophy and spirituality to Bitcoin that's so important. And I bet you, not to speak for Tomer or anybody else, but if you boiled it all the way down, I bet Tomer would just tell you either study Bitcoin or buy Bitcoin. And yet, I bet also that if you took these guys with these varying perspectives, like Puncher, Cosmonaut, and dare I start mentioning names because I'll forget somebody, but just that I see on stage, Robert, Thomas, Darkside, Kevin, Simon. I can't see if Eric is up or not, but all these guys, I bet if you told them to go in a room, sit around a conference table, come back out, you guys talk, and you guys come out and boil it down for us, they would come out, somebody would represent them and step up to the podium and say, buy Bitcoin, because that's the answer. That's the bottom line on all of this stuff. So I am here because I find it interesting and it's fun, and I love history and economics and all that, but it can be distracting. But if you want to just be able to do what you want to do without any of these distractions, doing things like my freedom maybe trifecta is an hourly DCA of Bitcoin. I have one that it's a small drip. I can fund this thing in perpetuity. So overnight, it doesn't matter what happened in the Asian markets or what happens when the markets open in the US, because for me, the very bottom line is how much Bitcoin I own. I buy it, I move it into cold storage. So I don't care what the dollar or the bonds or treasuries are doing, because I'm just buying more Bitcoin all the time. I run a node. It's very, very easy. I kind of went down the rabbit hole on that, and I decided to start running Bitcoin knots for a couple of main reasons. That's something you can look into. Is running a node where you can broadcast your own transactions. Things are permissionless at that point. Nobody can stop you. You're not asking permission, and you can set it up in an hour, and get the start doing the syncing and all that. You can have Bitcoin on your computer. Um, Also, I got into mining. I bought a BitAxe, and kind of as a hobby. So I'm providing a drip of decentralization, and hash power in that way too. I looked at who I thought it would be best to point that hash power to. So um, it's fun. You get all those things working for you, and then you can just go do whatever you want to do. If it's sit on spaces and talk to these smart guys, and interject your opinion, or read books, or go to work, do whatever you want to do. For me, those three things allows me to do that. So um, kind of find where you are in that spectrum from Tomer to these other guys, and I think doing things like that allows you to do what you want to do, for what it's worth.
All right, buddy. Kev, thanks, Justin. Kev, your floor,
Hey,
buddy.
so when people are looking at the volatility, we see these structural cracks. Dollar down, bonds down, stocks down. Zoom out a little bit. Look at a 10-year chart. Look at a 20-year chart. When I started in FX at the introduction of the euro, I mean, we went from parity, euro USD a buck down to 80 cents, and then back up to 120 in like 3 years. The volatility was crazy. It was like your average tech stock. So this dollar collapse, so-called collapse, isn't signaling much. It's more noise than signal. It's a temporary dislocation. And look, we built this up. We did crazy things, right? Like we were already in QE for a decade, and rates were low, inflation was low. Where was the inflation with all this liquidity from the Fed? Uh, and then, like, when is the bonfire going to get lit? And then COVID comes, pandemic. We make everybody stay home, shut down businesses, and then we inject, another 3-4 trillion. So that bonfire was bound to get lit for inflation. We had it coming, and so we're still reeling from those systemic effects. Does that mean we abolish the Fed tomorrow? Of course not. It just means this is a dynamic where, as our last speaker said, I think it was Justin, just like you take the opportunity and keep DCAing into Bitcoin.
Hey, we got Simon up. Simon, always eager to hear what you have to say, particularly going into a weekend. Thomas, Dark. So, guys, jump in and give us your thoughts.
Yeah, hey guys. Well, I'm with Robert actually. I think this is a real changing moment. I don't think this is a zoom out and recognize we're in the same business as usual. I reckon that the tariffs were a deliberate way of, and I'll come more from the hyperbolic stage. It puts off all the TradFi people. But I think this was a mechanism for avoiding World War III and moving to a new world order. That's as hyperbolic as you can get, but that's what I believe to be the truth. And I will always speak my truth. And so, I believe that you do need to look at what's happening. And I do think that even if I'm completely wrong and Robert's completely wrong on his belief around what's happening, and we managed to get the Fed returning the system to business as usual. Business as usual was good for Bitcoin, and this will also be good for Bitcoin. So whichever story you come up with, um, just pick your narrative that suits you and your conviction the most, and go down that tribe. And that's what I think. I don't think there's any benefit in someone coming up and saying, "Oh, don't speak like that, speak like this," because I would have been put off. The reality is, there's a million reasons why to own Bitcoin, and 100 people could explain why they own Bitcoin, and you will either gravitate towards that person or not. You might hate everything that I say, love everything that Robert says, or hate everything that me and Robert say, but love everything that Joe Calasari say. We're all here because we believe in Bitcoin. And so just pick your narrative, go down your tribe that gives you the most conviction, and follow that person and dig deep into it, because we're all saying the same thing. We just got a different reason of why we think people must own Bitcoin. And so all I can say to everybody is be your authentic self, tell your truth, and some will love you, some will hate you. But just be true to you. Don't change your narrative to try and be somebody else, because there's more than enough people that will explain why people need Bitcoin, that will resonate with different people. And so just tell the truth. That's all you got to do, and stack sats and buy Bitcoin, and recognize how lucky you are that you are in the room that's got Bitcoin on top of this. Because imagine the people that actually think Bitcoin's a scam, Bitcoin's a Ponzi scheme, or are listening to Peter Schiff right now, thinking that there's no difference between Bitcoin and Cardano. Like, you're in the right room. So be grateful for that, because we're going to experience it together, no matter what happens or who's right, who looks like an idiot in the end. Just make sure you look after you, because we are in a changing time and Bitcoin really matters.
Good
Great
rant.
stuff. Thanks, Simon. Dark, what are you up to, buddy? How you feeling?
Not feeling my best this morning. Sorry. Uh, yeah, great space. I'm sorry I hopped in late. I just wanted to ask Bob a question, and I mean Kevin. I'm sorry, Kevin. from I think a lot of our perspectives, one of the biggest problems that we face is the wealth inequality gap. And I'm curious what you think the solution is, right? From a TradFi perspective. I know for where I stand, I don't know if we've discussed bit bonds. I came in late, but I do believe there is an answer there, and I really do believe bit bonds is the answer to so many of our country's problems. But I'm just curious, you know, obviously, do you think there's a wealth inequality gap? I'm assuming you do. But what do you think from a TradFi perspective, from like a traditional perspective? How would you address it?
Hey, Dark. Great question. I know very little about bit bonds. So if that's a solution, I'm definitely interested in learning about it because there is a wealth inequality. When Besant was on TV, I think in March, he laid out his plan and it totally sounded like, hey, we're gonna create austerity for the bottom 50% and tax cuts for the rich and then hope it trickles down. I was like, man, we've had enough of that. The wealth has flowed to the top 10% because of equity markets supported by QE. So um, I'm, to me, I don't know all the solutions, but technology is going to be a huge disruptive force here. It's going to change economics with automation and disrupting jobs. That's going to happen whether we like it or not. There was this hearing before the Energy and Commerce Committee on Wednesday. I just found out about it this morning, and Eric Schmidt was there, former head of Google, and he laid it down very chillingly about what China is going to be able to do with cybersecurity, weapons, et cetera, and how we could easily fall behind. So, so my whole thing is, I'm a STEM educator for youth, as a hobby. I'm very interested in taking teenagers and giving them maximum education, like just basic math and science, so that they can keep up and adapt in the AI economy, which is changing extremely fast. I'll try and post this clip. It's a 1 minute clip of Eric Schmidt testifying before this committee on Wednesday, and it's just chilling to listen to him. And he knows this stuff. He's in all the circles about the most advanced technology and what AI is capable of. So I don't know exactly what to do about the inequality, but I know things are not headed in the right direction.
Kev, we always come to this brick wall in dark too, with regard to AI and what's inevitably coming down the pike. It's going to put a lot of people out of work. History shows us, though, that we're pretty industrious as human beings. We tend to figure it out. But the obvious problem is, as all these kind of entry level jobs and other, what I would call, well, white collar jobs go away, it's hard to imagine the solution with so many people out of work, not able to, fund their lives. Other than, everyone throws out the universal basic income, which I think is nothing more than slavery. So, on the one hand, I'm optimistic because we always seem to figure it out as humanity. But on the other hand, there's no denying it's going to be a problem. And on top of all the other problems we seem to have right now, it could lead to more asymmetry in the haves and the have-nots. And I don't know that we can even get to an answer. We just have to figure it out.
Yeah, I wrote my first article on this in 2016 after I read a report from 2013. Citibank and Oxford Martin did basically their analysis of what would automation do to jobs, and they throw out some rough estimates. Oh, it could eliminate 50% of jobs in the U.S. by 2030. But what was more shocking was that they were calling for roughly 70 to 85% elimination of jobs in China and India. And I thought, oh my God, here I thought that the 2 billion poor people in India and China would have a shot at, some level of prosperity, because they see the lifestyles of Americans and they want that, and there's going to be no jobs for them. So yeah, there are forces moving that we have no control over that are going to be stark for the bottom 50%.
Thomas, I'm sure you got a thought on that.
Yeah, so this was the core of my my consulting business. I wrote a book on this topic of about 6 years ago. I was way too early on how fast this was going to manifest. But what I would say to people, it has absolutely been true that society has been able to adapt to technological changes and absorb that productivity and pivot with minor dislocations. And it has everything to do with the pace of change. So uh, uh, think of human society as analog, and we're in this digital world. The issue we have is the pace of change now is exponential, and it's going to come to a point where I think we are going to struggle as a society to keep up with the changes that are happening. We'll see it in the knowledge worker world, and to the extent that jobs get displaced, yeah, there'll be opportunities for many people, but I'll just remind people, as let's just use this example. The number one job in the United States is truck driver, in terms of just the most pervasive. Um, what happens when the automated driverless vehicles get to a point where it's commonplace? Is that in 3 to 5 years? Probably. What happens to those people? Are they going to go learn to code? And so society needs to figure out what everyone's going to do, from the truck driver all the way up to the high end knowledge workers, and articulate where that's going to go. I personally think it's going to be disruptive because I don't think society can adapt quick enough. And we're not even discussing the idea that people have to adapt. And I think we're going to be caught off guard by how fast things are moving.
Yeah, I agree. We shall see. Um, let's see. We called a new couple people jumped up. Stack Me Sats is up. Wonder if you got anything to say. I think I added somebody else up here, but when we call you up, guys, as a speaker, hopefully you got something to say. So Stack Me, what do you got, buddy? Stack Me
Going
Sats.
once, going twice.
All right. We got Eric. Eric, how you
Hey
doing, bud?
guys. As always, great conversation. I think that there is just, right now we have a few different topics. So I want to go back to what Justin was saying earlier about running a miner, because it coincides with orange pilling. I'm sorry to rewind the conversation a little bit. If you want to orange pill people and you have people over at your house, run a miner, put it in your living room. There's no better conversation starter than somebody going, "Hey, what is that thing?" And I say, "Oh, well, I'm contributing to the Bitcoin network right now as a quality assurance, and my node over there is quality control."
Hey, Eric, you got, I think maybe
That
Puncher's
was
Fat
me. That
fingered
was
you
that
again.
was a fat finger on my end.
Oh, Cosmo.
Well,
You're
not
so
me.
fired. I'm just kidding.
Oh man,
Sorry.
I
Sorry,
Go
totally
ahead,
Eric.
forgot
Eric.
everything I was going to say. No, I'm just joking. Um, no, I think it's important to what Justin was saying about running a miner, running a node. It's if you want to orange pill people, walk the walk. When people come over to my house, I live in a neighborhood where people are always outside in golf carts and they swing by and stuff like that. When you have a miner sitting in your living room, people come in and they're like, "What is that?" And I say, "Oh, well, I'm contributing to the Bitcoin network right now. If I actually win a block, I'll be able to verify transactions, contribute to the network, and get rewarded for it." And they're like,
And pay for the
"Yeah,
community
big
barbecue then.
big time barbecue, yeah, if I actually hit." But it's important to do that because it's a conversation starter. I've got one in my living room, and there's one in the hallway in between my kids' bedrooms. So 15-year-olds and 11-year-olds are over here. "Mr. Rice, what is that thing in the hallway?" And we get a chance to talk about it. And all those kids have opened up a River account and put 50 or $100 into Bitcoin, and they're kids. The other thing, talking about what Simon and Simon, I would love to have you on a podcast or something like that, because you and I are very aligned. There's a lot of stuff out there. There's I think the first thing we all need to admit is that none of us really know what's going on. Some of us really know history, but that doesn't mean we understand what's happening now or in the future. And the best that we can do is study history, study the backlogs and back channels of history, and try to assimilate that into the modern world and make our best prediction. Like, we don't know. But at the same time, what he talked about when you're dealing with people who are saying, "Oh, Bitcoin's a Ponzi scheme," prevalent conversation out there. When you're getting those people that say that, it's important to understand that, you know, I'm a biblical guy, so if you're not a Christian, you may not know what I'm talking about here. But Jesus said that blessed are the peacemakers, not the peacekeepers. Peacekeepers are the ones that appease everyone and tell them what they want to hear, and there's no change and everything will be fine. Zoom out. The peacemakers are the ones who realize the truth, will speak the truth with grace, be kind to other people, but don't back away from it. Be able to continually hammer back on points that are very, very important, not just for them. I think that I orange pilled myself in 2022 after my business partners tried for months, and I'm just a stubborn old goat that needs to learn things on my own. I went completely all in as a gold bug. I've been taking profits in gold and moving them into Bitcoin in the last 3 weeks. And I think everyone should look at profit taking and transition of assets, because that is, you can't just buy stuff and sit on it, with the exception of maybe Bitcoin and maybe gold. I know some people hate gold. You should not hate gold. Gold has weathered the storm of the Bitcoin drop. It has made massive gains for me that I'm transitioning back into Bitcoin at a lower cost. You know, the diversification piece is an outdated conversation, but it's still important. So be proactive, do the things that represent the community. To give you a little insight on me personally or professionally, I'm in the middle of closing financing right now to be able to capture about 30,000 gallons of ethane per month in Tennessee, to run them through a fractionation plant, separate the ethane from CO2, sell the CO2 for profit and carbon credits for myself and my investors, and then converting that into a 8.3 megawatt off-grid facility to mine Bitcoin. And that wasn't the original design of this energy arbitrage. It was the most monetarily sound decision. We could easily sell 8.3 megawatts to an AI facility and rake in, 200 to 300,000 a month. But we'd rather use that energy to contribute to the Bitcoin network, because the thing we oftentimes don't talk about, the thing that drew me into Bitcoin full on in 2022, was not the understanding of Bitcoin and the monetary policy. It was the understanding of proof of work and the actual network that expands the entire globe. Bitcoin is no longer a money system. It is a living organism that is an independent, energetic nation comparable to Poland and Spain. If that isn't a military grade weapon in the monetary system, I do not know what it is. To give you guys a breakdown of this, because this is like my research of as an entrepreneur before I go into something I want to know. We're pretty average around 800 exahash on the hash power, and most of that's just hashing. It's not actually miners with templates. It's just hashing. But that level of hashing requires about 29 to 31 gigawatts of energy. Poland and Spain use 30 gigawatts per year. So that is a massive, massive load of energy, but 61% of it is coming from sustainable off-grid energy. 61%. That's up from 29% 3 years ago. AI is the next evolution, like Thomas was talking about. I don't know that anyone knows the answer as to what people do when they lose their jobs, and they certainly will lose jobs. I think UBI is unavoidable. I actually think Doge is the softener that allows people to understand, okay, well, we're going to get rid of all this government spending, all these people, and they're all going to lose their jobs, and you guys are next. And now we can introduce UBI because it'll be needed. So I don't think UBI is anything we avoid, because that's just my perspective. I could be completely off. But I think the important thing about Bitcoin and AI that makes sense is, number one, Bitcoin will be the money of AI. That's pretty obvious at this point. Number two, proof of work is so important to AI. We have Stargate with Larry Ellison, Sam Altman, all these other guys out here who no one trusts, literally nobody trusts. And that is building a centralized AI system. The more we understand and endorse proof of work, the more truly decentralized AI can be, because these mining centers, some of them don't have energy breaks. They don't know how to do energy arbitrage or lower their cost. They're going to end up being bankrupt at some point and go out of business and become centralized AI centers. If we can get the decentralization conversation going with people and say, people talk about the money system. I say, what the problem in the world is? that all the money and all the power is concentrated to a small few who make decisions for all of us, and it's always been that way. Imagine if we all had the chance to have input and make decisions for ourselves financially and then politically eventually. That's only done through decentralization and proof of work. I think it's such an important topic that we don't talk about too much. But I'm rambling on, guys. Sorry to be so long.
Nah, that was outstanding, Eric. Really outstanding. I want to go to Tomer because Tomer always brings us back. And by the way, my Fridays,
Yeah.
Tomer, I take a 5 milligram pot gummy and I watch Bitcoin
Hmm.
is Beautiful, and it
I
makes
know
my
you. I know
week.
you love that movie, and I really appreciate. I
I
really
do.
appreciate it. But thank you. Um, I wasn't sure who was just speaking there because my Twitter Spaces is all kind of messed up. But I think the comment that I would make to try to bring it back to my earlier comments is like, if you listen to somebody like that and you haven't spent much time understanding how Bitcoin works, you might think, well, maybe they're a little bit crazy, or I'd like to believe that they're right, but I don't. But am I just taking them at face value? But if you, on the other hand, I'm sorry, I'm just cooling off an egg here. Um, if you do um, take the time to understand how Bitcoin works and what proof of work actually is and how the transactions work and what it means that if you're mining in your own house, and what it means if you're running a node in your own houses, as others have said, you will be able to actually form a view that you have conviction in, with some degree of certainty around certain of those claims. So, some you'll have 100% conviction in. Some you'll say, "Oh, I can actually see the logic of how that goes," and you'll also start to develop an appreciation for a concept like decentralization, which I think is I'm working on starting another book. Writing another book, and as I've been making my notes for it and starting to write pieces of it, I realize that if you just say Bitcoin is decentralized money, people understand what money is. They, not as sophisticated as the level as of what we go into here, but there's not many people you say the word money to and they put a weird expression on their face, like they don't know what you're talking about. But decentralized is a word that very few people understand. And even within Bitcoin, I think it takes a lot of time of studying the decentralized aspect of Bitcoin to understand it, because practically everything that we see around us that's man-made, that's a man-made organization or institution, is centralized. It has a leader or a board of directors or decision makers, and they're responsible for deciding how that thing will change over time and who will be in charge of it and who won't be in charge of it. And Bitcoin has none of these things. And it's not that it has something else in its place. It has none of these things, and it's not looking to have any of these things in its place. And so it just boggles the average mind. You know, that meme, like the American mind can't understand the Bitcoin, the European mind can't understand. The average mind can't understand an institution that has no people in charge of it, and that there's nobody that you can complain to, and there's nobody you understand. And so once you start to understand, well, how was this thing created, and how does it operate, and what are the implications, which in every instance are so different than the implications for a centralized organization, including pretty much every other altcoin, right? Every other altcoin encounters some kind of problem. Well, the leader steps in and proposes a hard fork to change it and goes ahead and changes it. With Bitcoin, there's a problem. It's like, well, you change, not Bitcoin's not changing, so you change so that this whatever you've identified as a problem isn't a problem for you any longer. So anyhow, now my rant is getting a little bit long, but it's again, and I want to spend more time talking to people about helping them understand how Bitcoin works, because I think, like Simon was up a little bit earlier, there's a lot of political ideas and things that I hear Simon talking about that I really disagree with. But whenever I hear Simon talk about how Bitcoin works, I'm like, he knows his shit. He's got it absolutely right. I got nothing to disagree with there, because at the base of it, Bitcoin is a protocol that's very well defined and very straightforward to understand. And when someone makes a mistake about it, you can easily point it out and you can demonstrate to them that they've made a mistake about it. So we're all in agreement on this thing, but to actually be in agreement on this thing, you do have to study it. And so that's my soapbox for today.
That was awesome, Tomer. And we'll go to Eric real quick. I do agree. There are no certainties, only probabilities. But if you want to get some high probabilities, you start studying Bitcoin, and you get about as close to certain as you're going to get. I got let's see, Eric, and then Dark, and Lauren. I got to run out for
No
five
problem, buddy.
minutes, and
I got your back.
Cosmo.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Yep.
Yeah,
Thanks.
just kind of address that topic. Number one, Puncher, I just sent you a really funny tweet on your DM. I think you'll enjoy later tonight. I think you'll like it. I'm going to get to Dark because I love listening to him. Hope you feel better, man. Hope you're feeling way better. Sucks being sick. Decentralization is such an obscure thing that I try to tie it back to other things in history. We Americans, and honestly, we who understand decentralization don't really know its total impact on the world because we've been so tyrannized our entire lives for all of human existence. One of the things I find is a funny correlation is you can look back in Christianity and you can look at Jesus coming down from heaven. I'm a believer, so I believe that. So Jesus came down from heaven at a very dark time, one of the darkest times in history, to shed light. People know that. More importantly, he actually came down from heaven to destroy the church model. He actually said, "Church is two or more talking in my name." He was trying to literally decentralize the church system, which has gone directly back into mega pastors, spewing false doctrine all over the place. This is very akin to what Bitcoin has done, where now you have Satoshi, whoever they may be or he may be, came down and basically said, hey, here's this thing that no one controls that you can be a part of that could change your life and the life of all of humanity if you just follow along and participate. And the correlations between it are fantastic. So you have the Genesis block. The first book in the Bible is Genesis. And in Genesis, it says that even the slaves of the pharaohs were paying 20%, we're paying 40%. There's scripture all over the Genesis block, and the 666 block has scripture. And then where did Bitcoin actually launch? A little place called El Salvador, which translates to the Savior. It's kind of like Bitcoin is in this New Testament version of its evolution. And of course, the powers that be will always fight against decentralized anything. I think the big thing about Bitcoin people misunderstand, or decentralization that they misunderstand, because lives have been geared to be so busy, both parents working, everyone paying taxes, constantly on the grind. You have to find ways to delegate obligations in life. And people have delegated all the most important obligations in life to governments and banks. And when people start to realize that and say, hey, just by plugging this stupid little machine into my living room or bedroom, I'm actually contributing to sovereignty. Even if I don't make a penny, it costs me $4 a month in extra energy to contribute to sovereignty, to something we actually do not understand because we've never been granted the opportunity. I think it's so important that if you guys are going to be out there orange pilling, you can talk about the money aspect, you can talk about number go up, but you're going to have to justify it at the end of the day. And the way to justify number go up and scarcity and value of scarcity is why it matters and how people can be impacted in their own lives. So I love decentralization conversations because they're, to me, far more important than number go up. If we do a good job, and I think Trump put it best in Nashville last year, and I was right there when he said it. He said, Bitcoin is a modern marvel of human cooperation. And that is maybe the truest statement about Bitcoin that's ever existed. And when we start to not cooperate, and not like, I love Bitcoiners because you can look at altcoin communities and all they do is there's a narrative, they feed the narrative. Bitcoiners constantly are at each other's throat trying to find the truth. That's what makes it different. But that's fine, that's good stuff. But when it comes down to, if you want Bitcoin to succeed, you got to be involved in it. And that's, you've got to be, a preacher on the pulpit sometimes, you've got to be a consultant in the back room with someone at sometimes. But more importantly, you've got to kind of live and breathe this stuff so everyone around you truly understands what decentralization means to sovereignty. And it's so important, I think.
You got to run a node sometimes, and you got to
Absolutely.
hold your own keys. And yeah, you do have to be an active participant. It's about responsibility. Freedom comes with responsibility.
I
So this is
think you
all tied
also,
together.
sorry to jump
Yeah.
in.
No, go ahead.
I think you also got to be prepared to know that you're going to push the limits.
And just like that, we lost Tomer. Tomer, you must be getting a call or something because you blanked out right there. Are you back? Tomer, we can't hear you. Maybe we'll just click down to one of the hands real quick before Tomer, you just blanked right out. We'll recycle Tomer, and oh, looks like we lost the co-host too. Kevin, looks like you're off hold.
Dark side. was next.
Dark's next. Okay, Puncher, are you back from your 5-minute hiatus yet? I'm assuming you went to the little boys' room or something.
I am not, but I wanted to really hear what Tomer was
Yeah,
about
me
to
too.
say
And then
because it
Dark.
sounded like it was really
We'll
I
let
am
profound.
Dark
back.
go. Oh, he's
If you
back.
can
Okay,
hear
let's
me.
go. Let's go, Tomer, and then Dark.
Okay, no, I was just going to say, like, listening to the last speaker, if you're going to go down the rabbit hole of trying to understand Bitcoin and trying to understand decentralization in particular, as my last comment and his most recent comment said, like, you have to be prepared that you're going to go into some pretty weird territory because this is a pretty unusual thing. And, you know, and at some point you're like, gee, this often feels a lot like the Bible is, you know, and I've known people who've wondered, like, gee, is Bitcoin a harbinger of the second coming, or is it the second coming, or is it the? And you know, you go through a lot of different. You're about to take your mind and your conception through something that it hasn't experienced before, and so it is. It is, a lot of people compare it to like a psychedelic experience, or they can, you know. And I'm not trying to scare people because you're in control of this whole experience. It's not like you've taken a double tab of LSD and now for the next 12 hours you're not in control anymore. You actually are in control, but you're into territory that's unlike any territory that you've ever been in before. And so it takes time to comprehend it. There are times when your mind will start making connections that you're not really sure if they're right or wrong, but you just have to keep pressing on. I mean, I'm getting connection errors again, so I may be losing you guys, but I'll kind of leave
Yeah.
it at that.
No, that's good stuff. Not that we're judging you LSD lovers out there. So, no, I that was amazing. As always, Tomer. We are at Rusty, I believe. Rusty.
Yeah. So I was listening to Eric talk, and I was thinking about this, and you talk about orange pilling people. Like again, in TradFi world is where I've been. I know Dark too, and like, hope you feel better. Um, and just I, my thing, and maybe Simon and Dark. I'm trying to formulate this idea, right? Where look at Swift, right? The traditional finance world trusts this system, and it's like honestly, it's like a DOS system or the Pony Express compared to Bitcoin, right? And if they can see that, I'm trying to think of how you could convey that because they all trust Swift, and then you got Bitcoin, which is proof of work. And like Eric was saying earlier when he's saying about AI, what is going to be the control over this? And again, I go back to it's like every time I get in conversation about stablecoin, this, that, and the other is it's like, look, it's all gonna flow back to Bitcoin one day. So I just want to throw that out there because I'm like, y'all trust Swift so much, but yet y'all think Bitcoin's wacky or weird or cultish, like, and I'm talking about the guys who have never experienced it or even looked at it that much, but are heavy into TradFi. So anyway, I just wanted to toss that out. Thanks.
I think the Swift side, the Swift conversation, from my perspective, is firstly, this obviously won't resonate with them, but Swift was created as a control network to weaponize the dollar and connect it to the other fiat currencies and use that as a mechanism for having people opt in to that financial system in order to be able to engage in the international transaction system. And it was created by a group of banks that were, looking for that control mechanism. But that aside, speaking to a normal person, um, it's the final settlement. So the whole conversation around, like I do so many international payments a day, and Swift is the most unreliable system. Like I think probably 20% of the time my international wire gets where I want, and I've probably got about 5% confidence in it. And then there's a travel rule, then you've got to provide all the documentation. But Bitcoin is a final settlement network. And that has its pros and cons in their mind. But you can just go into the implications of a final settlement network without needing anyone in the middle, and it probably helps them understand that.
Yeah, I
And,
think
and
we're.
that's what I was getting at, just real quick, Simon. Is again, I could and I understand the theoretical side of, or not even theory, but why it began. But I also have experienced that because I was processing so many payments for CDOs and CLOs, and you're right, they were a disaster. Trying to get them to go where they were going internationally, I was like, oh, this thing's is awful, but yet everyone relied on it, and I'm like, okay. So I appreciate those comments, though.
Sorry, Dark. I think we've been leaving Dark in the dark, coincidentally. Dark side.
Yeah. So, sorry. Just to kind of go back to what Tomer was saying originally, it's here. Here's the thing, right? For us TradFi guys who spent a career, fighting the system or at least participating in a broken system, it's hard for the average pleb to understand just how much we hate, the careers we had because of the system being so broken, so corrupt. It's not just Swift. Like we talked about this quite a bit yesterday, right? There's corruption at every level, from your stockbroker to your investment advisor to the broker dealer to the regulator to the product, right? Like at every level, the system is completely broken and corrupt. And once you have this exposure to Bitcoin, right? Like, and once you get Bitcoin, so as a TradFi guy that put in 1,000+ hours, who absolutely is enamored with this concept of hardest money, right? Because gold isn't hard money. Gold's a myth, right? So once you're exposed to this solution, right, like it's mind blowing in your ability, in our abilities, I should say, to not try to take that next step and figure out, okay, we have Bitcoin now, right? We have this broken system. How do we fix it, right? It becomes about solutions, and I think that's why so many of us spend so much time talking politics and TradFi, because we understand at the deepest layer how bad the system is and how this Bitcoin has the ability to once in a literally in a millennia change the way we do things. So I think that's why we kind of take it always to the next level, because okay, I get Bitcoin, I understand it at a very deep level, but now what? Right? How does this transformation from fiat to hard money work? What does it look like? Right? The same way Kevin was talking about AI. Now, I kind of have a little bit of a different perspective on AI, right? Because I think that it's so destructive that at some point the populace rises up against it. And that's really never discussed, but I think that's a subject for a different show. But going back, bringing this back to the integration of Bitcoin into a TradFi system, this is really the kind of the $64 million question, right? Like, how do we fix it? We now have a solution. How do we integrate it? How do we fix it? And when I listen to Simon talk so eloquently about how bad the current system is, there's a reason why, right? Because he lived it, right? I lived it. It's awful. And ultimately, it's one thing to have Bitcoin, it's another thing to deploy it. And I think that's where we are today, right? Bitcoin is being slowly but surely deployed into the system. And what does that look like? There's nothing more fascinating for me, at least, to go down that road. So while people get frustrated with us kind of going to that next level, kind of let's call it the deployment issue, right? For us, this is really the nuts and bolts of how we get from here to there, right? How do we replace broken money with hard money in a system that is constructed around broken money at every level? So I just throw that out there because like I like to talk about bit bonds. I like to talk about a lot of different ways in which Bitcoin can actually be deployed into the system to improve it. So I'll just land the plane there.
Boom. Wow. Man, talk about incentives and the current system: greed, power, control, manipulation.
Lauren, can I
Ultimately,
jump in here?
ultimately evil.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Kev, go ahead.
sure.
And then
Please,
Bitcoin
Kev.
Pilot after that.
So,
Pilot's up here
so,
too. Yeah, go ahead.
so Rusty was talking about Swift, and then Simon had some comments too. I think, most people here have never used the Swift system, that kind of thing. So I just want to put this in perspective for Bitcoin, okay, in terms of the volume of transactions and the speed and the reliability. So in 1998, before I became an FX trader, I worked in the back office of this FX shop. And so I had to process the payments that had to go out. Spot settles, in 48 hours, spot has to settle. So, you got to send your Swiss, send your British pounds, your Japanese yen, and receive them. So I was creating billions in payments every night, and the system was incredibly reliable. Okay, sometimes it used Swift. There were other things. We created our payments on BAMTrack, which was a Bank of America payments, because they were our prime broker. But what I'm trying to emphasize is that the economy runs on liquidity, but also the machinery, the plumbing that can make payments go back and forth extremely quickly, extremely reliably. And if I made a mistake on a payment, yeah, it would come back and cost us. We'd have to pay the interest, whatever the overnight interest was on that mistake on that payment. But all payments got settled. So that international banking settlement system in FX, in bonds, and even in equities it's very robust, and so that's not the so the machinery works. That's not the same as whether or not the U.S. economy, borrowing too much works or not. So if if the Bitcoin network can learn anything, they want to learn from that. So that's where this integration comes from between TradFi and the Bitcoin network is, what can we learn from settlement systems that worked before that were efficient? Right or wrong, the money has to move. It has to be settled in 2 days, and if it doesn't, you pay the interest cost. So, that's how Bitcoin and the network can learn from TradFi in terms of the volume of transactions that get done every single night. You know, um, if I traded 100 million in a night, that meant that our back office was processing at least 3 to 4 billion in payments. So that's just what I wanted to share.
Bitcoin Pilot.
Yeah, I was just gonna piggyback on what Simon was saying. To give a better, so 99% of people, including myself, never sent a Swift payment, never dealt with Swift network. A lot of people have never sent an international wire transfer, so they don't know the pain of that. I mean, many people have never sent a wire transfer, period. But if you are a Canadian, you know that Swan and River are not available to you, and maybe you don't know why that's the case. Or if you're a Swan or River customer, you may not know why you have to wait 30 days for your money to be, or your Bitcoin to be withdrawable. And that's because in the United States, we allow reversal of ACH transfers for up to, I think it's between 15 and 30 days. And so that's the reason why I have a customer or a client that I was talking to the other day, and they were complaining about that. They're like, why I can't get my Bitcoin? I just bought it on River and I can't get it off for 30 days. Like, what the hell? It's supposed to be my Bitcoin, right? And I was like, well, they'd love to give you your Bitcoin. The problem is we don't have final settlement. Luckily, we have this thing called Bitcoin where we do have final settlement. So even if you're not aware of these sort of limits of the system we have right now, you're still affected by them, even if you don't know it. And there are, we have this system now with Bitcoin where we don't have to do that anymore. We have final settlement within 10 minutes. We can send it all over the world. It's a use case that you can see first person anytime you deal with one of these exchanges and the limitations of the current system that we have. And if you need to make an example of why Bitcoin's so important, that's a great thing to point at right there, to just say, well, if we were running on a Bitcoin network, there wouldn't be this delay in time. You would have final settlement almost immediately, and you wouldn't have to wait for the ACH system that was essentially put into place 60, 70 years ago to finalize your transactions. We wouldn't have that problem. I just think it's a very clear identity of what the issue is and why Bitcoin is so much better.
Great stuff. Puncher, what are you looking like on time? And did you want to? I always want to tease Vegas because I would be curious and wanting to hang out with a lot of the folks that frequent these spaces, even if it just means we all pick a spot, a bar, whatever it is, and just say, hey, at 6 o'clock or whatever, we're going to meet at such and such a place, whoever's going to Vegas. I don't
Why
know
don't you
where you
talk a
want to
little
go.
bit of, why don't you talk a little bit about that, and then we'll round it out and
Sure.
wish everybody a
Okay.
great weekend.
Yeah, that sounds good. Um, there is potential for a sponsor to sponsor an event, but nothing has been finalized. Nothing's in concrete, so I won't make any announcement until we're certain of that. But absolute worst case scenario, like it'd be cool to meet as many people as possible. I know I haven't been to a ton of events, probably only three or four, and when I do go, even the smallest one I think was around 200 people. I didn't even get to meet everybody. I thought I would. And to me, like the exciting part is, putting faces to all these weird emojis and all these other things, and just shaking everybody's hand and putting two and two together. That's the value to me in this, is all those connections and that networking. So let's at least stay in contact, send each other DMs and whatnot to pull the trigger on these things. I don't know how many people from these spaces are going, but like I said, it would be super cool to. I'm definitely going to see Puncher and the Dark Side and like the folks that are like the core group that kind of stayed with this whole thing through when it started with Fred and all the way through. So but really want to expand it and just like it's like nobody is. I hate the heroes thing in any network, but especially Bitcoin network, because that's the antithesis of Bitcoin, which is just the peers. We're all the same, and I just want to hang out as such and just be like, hey guys, let's all get to know each other, because there's some brilliant folks in here. There's some dumber guys like me that really learn a lot from these smarter people. But I just love the community, so I want to hang out. I want to meet everybody. So that being said, let's stay in touch. And I'm coming in on Tuesday, stay until Friday. So I don't know if that helps. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's so many after parties and things going on, but hopefully we'll be able to find a time when we work that all together. But maybe we just take it around the room and give people the last. I guess saying last words sounds like they're dying, but parting words for the listener. What do you think, Puncher?
Sounds like a plan.
Start at Eric, because I think he was unmuted there.
Yeah, I'm more than happy. My wife's side of the family lived in Vegas for 22 years, so I'm more than happy to
Oh
find
wow.
a place for us, and our company would be more than happy to throw up a little money to sponsor it as well. Be loving to
Oh,
meet
that
all you
sounds
guys.
fun. Yeah, that sounds cool. I mean, I'm down to go to more than one party too, guys, because I find even when we're meeting locally, we have 20 to 30 or 40, depending on price. It seems like that we'll meet, and I don't know. I want to stay on my feet, because if you're at a table or something, you only get to really talk to the people within the proximity of that your voice reaches. So hopefully we can like make it in some event place where we can actually be mobile and move around and try to meet as many people as possible. That sounds awesome, Eric. Really
How
appreciate
about
that.
this? We're going to set
Yeah.
Lauren up in a room like Santa Claus, and you can go meet
Sit on
Lauren.
his knee. Yeah. No,
I
that's
think that's
that's
called
really
Spearmint Rhino.
horrible. I think yeah. Yeah. I take tips in less than $20 denominations. No, I think that is horrible, because that goes to the whole like setting someone on a pedestal thing. So that's just awful. I prefer to be in the jorts walking down with a PBR in my hand, just hanging out with everybody and enjoying everyone else. So
Hey,
I
real quick
exaggerate. I
funny
don't want.
story. I met Lauren at Fred's event, which was actually very, very good out in Santa Monica.
Yeah, it was
And
good because we all got to meet each other.
yeah, it was awesome.
Go
And
on.
so Lauren's emoji, or not emoji, what do you call it? Your facial thing there was a big fat guy with glasses on. So I kept texting him, I'm in the back of the room, and I was looking for a big fat guy, like a big fat old guy. And he's like, I don't see you. I said, I don't see you here. He had walked by me like 6 or 7 times. And I was looking for a big fat guy, and it was actually a young, handsome guy that I should have been looking for. So That's how I met Lauren.
I love you too, man. I'm 6'4", and 220, so I'm tall. Yeah, so he didn't know what to expect. And my last profile image was actually the president of the Bank of International Settlements. Is it Augustin Carstens or whatever? Carson, yeah, that guy. So anyway, yeah, but then we met and we had an amazing time, hung out 2 nights, burned the midnight oil both nights because we all had an amazing time. So hopefully we can relive that and all plebs hang out and have a great time. Let's go to Dark Side. Dark, you'll be there. Maybe Dark is,
Nah, yeah, no, sorry about that. I had to find the mute
there he
button.
is.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm going to be in Vegas. Look forward to meeting so many people. And I just decided not even to buy a ticket. I'm just going to be hanging around on the sidelines with Lauren and just want to meet everybody and get to shake hands and put names with faces. Super looking forward to it. And yeah, I live here, so Vegas is awesome. And
Vegas.
hopefully we'll have a great time.
We shall. Tomer, you just came off mute. I'm assuming you
Yeah.
want to jump in next.
Well, I'm going to be in Vegas too. Just saying.
Yay. That
Closing
sounds
thoughts,
great.
Tomer. Anything on your mind? Round us out.
No, I mean, I think maybe it's for latecomers. I'm kind of repeating myself, but a big part of what I've been trying to revive, and maybe in the next couple of spaces, we can spend more time actually talking about how Bitcoin works at a fundamental level, so that people can understand what this system is, and they can also understand, like what Pilot was just talking about, how it's the connectivity to the traditional system that's causing all kinds of issues and frustrations for people. Once you have your Bitcoin on the Bitcoin network, you don't have to wait 30 days for some regulator to approve it because something else is delayable. Once you understand how Bitcoin works, and you understand that Bitcoin, the currency, is its currency, you're in a much better place to have comfort about your choices in the world as they relate to Bitcoin, and maybe as they relate to opting out of the traditional system. You don't have to understand the traditional system perfectly to see problems that exist within it that don't exist within the Bitcoin architecture. So that's what I'm encouraging people to do, whether it's through impressing upon us to talk about those things more in our spaces, or doing your own research, learn more about how Bitcoin works. And that's different from all of this. I don't want to call it noise, but all this other information that comes at you, that's macroeconomics and headline news and geopolitical events. Like, Bitcoin is sheltered from all of those things. And so once you learn Bitcoin, you don't have to keep relearning it based off of the latest headlines. Whereas all of the theories that we're hearing about, the world is changing, it's collapsing. No, it's not. Yes, it is. It's collapsing because of this or that. These are narratives that come and go every week practically, but they certainly come and go with the seasons. And you and you can feel very uncertain living in a world like that. So Bitcoin is actually the cure for uncertainty. I'll leave it at that.
No, that was awesome. That was
Sure
awesome.
was.
Let's go.
Wonderful.
Let's go with Rusty.
Rusty.
Yeah, I was, and Pilot brought up the ACH system, automated clearinghouse. That's another one I didn't think about for a second. But in America, it's a 3-day settlement system, and it's ridiculous. You go cash. When I first started working, I was in traditional banking. I was managing a bank branch. If you brought in a check from someone who was not banking with the bank, and it was over like $2,000, you had to put a hold on it to make sure it cleared, and it was like 7 days. I mean, these are the things but this is so much money. But that's what's so beautiful about Bitcoin. And the biggest thing about Bitcoin that gives me hope is, now through this, whatever happened recently, I don't want to get political, I don't care. The value, the it's solid. And I mean, I laughed and I made a comment. There was a traditional media outlet, finance outlet. They were like, "Oh, Bitcoin plummets to 76,000." This was the day after the first drop. I was like, "You mean like it did March 11th? That's not a big deal, and it's right back up." I was like, "That's." Or are you just dying for it to drop because it didn't drop at all that day? It's a joke. but no, it's held so strong, and that's just proven here in this community and people adopting it, and that finally is like so awesome, so awesome. Anyway, thanks guys.
Hey, Rusty. Sorry to interject, but Rusty, another area where you can talk to TradFi guys about why Bitcoin is important. The ACH 3-day delay, Swift can be even longer than that. Someone's holding that money. Someone is holding that money. And when I was in TradFi years ago, I used to always, when I would trade for clients, I would always swap their money into 7-day municipal paper. So every 7 days, they're getting, tax exempt interest on their money. They took away that product, I think, for the retail sector like 14 or 15 years ago. So don't think for a second that banks aren't using those delays as a way to, when you have $40 billion in ACH that's sitting there waiting for clearance for 3 days, don't think for a second that bank isn't getting 7-day municipal tax-free paper interest on their money. A really good point to bring up with the TradFi guys.
All right, can I jump in here?
Yeah, jump in, Kev.
What Rusty brought up about ACHs and Eric just chimed in too. I got to tell you, my bank account got hacked in December of 23, and it was with Citi, and it was a nightmare. It was only $10,000, but the wire transfers, somebody hacked in, changed my password, wire transfers went out, within minutes. And I fought them like hell. I did financial forensics and collected evidence and just hammered them every day for 3 months to get my money back, when it looked like I was definitely not going to get my money back, because I don't know if you guys know this, under the Electronic Funds Transfer Act, which is super old, many things are exempt. Or actually, what I should say is, you are protected from all kinds of fraud in your bank account, but not from wire transfers. So if anybody, first of all, obviously do whatever you can. We still have bank accounts. Do whatever you can to protect and change your passwords, and watch, if you're getting if you got phishing stuff on your browser that's following your passwords, whatever, protect that as much as you can. But if you do get hacked, feel free to DM, call me, or message me, and I will show you how you fight back.
That is awesome.
It is.
I
Like,
Thank you,
I
Kevin.
can actually interject, and to anyone who does, I can help you out, because I dealt with credit and bank at the highest level of fraud. And yes, he's right. Wire fraud is so hard to get back. So it does. That's another reason for Bitcoin.
hell yeah. Let us go. Terrence is back from special assignment, so maybe we'll jump to him before we go to Bitcoin Pilot. Good morning, Terrence.
Hey
There we
guys,
go.
how's it going? Sorry I'm late. Yeah, don't let
You're
me
very late.
don't let me stop the flow. Let's go to
We were
Bitcoin.
we were we were actually going. We were saying goodbyes, buddy. So you got here. We'll go back to you though. We'll go to Bitcoin Pilot now, and then we'll shoot back to Terrence after Bitcoin Pilot. Bitcoin Pilot is flying an airplane right now,
That's
and
your
he
cue,
can't.
Bitcoin
Hey,
pilot.
sorry,
Yeah,
I'm here.
yeah. No, you're good.
No, I had just one point I wanted to make, which is just to not forget, like to not forget how important Bitcoin is. And I know we talk about it all the time, but like to me, like when this era is done and gone and written about in 1,000 years from now, nobody is going to be talking about Donald Trump or Elon Musk or any other name you can think of in the current era. But Satoshi's name will be written in the books the same way that Achilles or Hercules or Jesus Christ was written about. We only have so many names that stand out in history, and like Satoshi is the only name that will be remembered from this age, because it will be remembered as the dawning of the Bitcoin age and the dawning of the Bitcoin Renaissance. And don't lose sight of that just because you think it's going to replace Swift or whatever else you think it might do. Like it's so much
And
more
then you
important
kick
than
it to
that.
me, and then we'll.
It's so much more important than that.
All
So
right, beautiful. Yeah, no,
uh,
totally agree.
I'm gonna go play some golf. So enjoy yourselves.
Oh
Talk to you
man,
later.
I'm jealous.
All right,
Nothing but birdies and pars, my
Birdies
man.
and
bye.
parts. We'll kick it over to Terrence.
Hey guys, sorry I don't know what the time is, but I
Topic is Bitcoin, love, truth, hope, all the good stuff.
Well, that's perfect. I was actually just talking. The reason I couldn't join is I was on a Zoom with this. I don't know how to describe her. She's like a uh, leadership optimization coach for VC tech founders in San Francisco, where she is, and she reached out to me because she said that she had read my book, or her husband had read my book, and she said, I'm talking to all of these tech guys in Silicon Valley, and but more about just improvements in their relationships, improvements in their their daily methods and systems and whatnot. And she said more and more they're talking about Bitcoin peripherally. And she's like, I need to know more about Bitcoin. So anyways, it was our second session, but she is becoming hardcore orange pill. She's like, I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop thinking about how this solves all kinds of mental issues and health issues. And like she's very smart. So she quickly jumped sort of down to the secondary and tertiary, effects that we're very familiar with now being in Bitcoin. And I don't know, just it just really gets me excited and jazzed to see someone, see the light bulb click there. Um, Anyways, in this session, I gave her 12 words. She, downloaded Blue Wallet. She pumped them in, and she like learned very quickly about sovereignty and who holds the keys. And so, anyways, it was just fun. So I'm bummed I missed the space, but it was really cool to see her get Bitcoin and be like, okay, I can't stop thinking about it. Anyway,
Wow.
I would say this is one you might want to listen to the rewind, Terrence. It was pretty good, I think, in my opinion.
I will do that. Thank you. Yeah, and I see the other Kevin is here. So thanks, Puncher.
He is here. I'll kick it to me now, and then we'll leave it with Puncher. But for me, I think that when we focus on all the things that divide us, as I guess Simon brought it up really well, in that no matter which scenario you choose, Bitcoin is at the end of that scenario or that road, whether it be the political thing or, oh, we think the economy and the markets are going to melt down or they're not. Like, it doesn't matter. And what we really need to focus on is that end game, is the long term, past our lifetimes, past our grandkids' lifetimes, which is the hope and love for humanity, for us, for people, for civilization. And what is this all about? What is this big ride all about? It's about relationships and love and all the good stuff. And I think that's why I resonate so much with Bitcoin. It's something that I have found in life, having done many, many things occupationally, been in a lot of different relationships, just trying and just seeking for that thing. Like I also believe in God, and so I resonate when a lot of these folks stand up and talk about their faith. And so to me, like I hold on to these things the most dear. And so my foundations in life have been shaken many times. So when I have found these less than handful, maybe count them all on one or two fingers, foundations, I hold on dearly. And Bitcoin is one of these things for me. And so for me, it's also a foundation that can't be corrupted like our current system can. And so to me, it's important to get that message out. And I do want to go ahead and try to join hands across the aisle or wherever it is in religion or in politics or whatever it may be. I want to get those people uh, throw them the life raft, man, because to me, this is their hope as well. So I don't want to hate on people and tell them to F off and have fun staying poor and all the other jazz. I want to say, hey guys, but I mean, it's important to understand their intentions too, because there are those people out there which maliciously and don't care are more motivated by the other side of that spectrum, which is evil and whatnot. And I think there is a time to be more toxic in those situations to defend good. But for the most part, I want to bridge the gap and invite more people to join the orange wave. So with that, I will kick it over to Puncher. Have a great weekend, everybody, and I enjoyed the space as always with all you cool, awesome folks.
Yeah, first I want to thank Kevin Brent Cook for jumping on. It could have easily gone a different direction, right? Kevin and I could have, and Dark could have been, throwing turd bombs over the fence and MFing each other and calling each other stupid, and that's just so counterproductive and stupid. So Kevin came up, and Kev, it's like anytime, man. We would love to have you up here in the space. We do it every day, and then we jump on from here and there. It's very decentralized. So if you wanted to run a space, I'm sure we could do that as well. And this is what I love about Bitcoin. I am so incredibly grateful That somehow I wandered into this like information asymmetry, and it wasn't because I was smart. I just got lucky in a lot of ways. But so incredibly grateful to be in a room with guys like Dark and Kevin and Lauren and Puncher. That's me. I'm just reading it, and I've read myself. But Tomer. Like my life would have never included Tomer, but not for Bitcoin. And just think about how tragic that is. Tomer is an amazingly talented dude. So I'm super grateful, and gratitude is the key to happiness. Rusty too, and 10 other Thomas. I am literally overcome with gratitude. So thank you guys for being here. I would love to meet everybody in Vegas, and we got a lot of work ahead of us, but it's fun. And when things are fun, it's not work; it's life. So thanks, guys, and have a great weekend. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you. Bye.
Did the space end, Lauren, or am I just talking to myself?
Sorry, yeah, it was sometimes when I hit end too soon, it actually chops the recording off. Like I don't know how it figures out to cut it off 5 seconds earlier. So I've learned to just let it stretch a little longer. So learning as we go, learning on the fly. Building the airplane while we're flying it, ladies and gentlemen. Adios. Have a great weekend. Talk soon.